Oh, hello, it's Philip. I'm here to do an interview with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, perfect. The first question, what made you want to become an actress and what was your first big break?
Well, I didn't, it wasn't a hankering I have to be an actress.
Yeah.
It was, I was in some plays when I was in school. My mother bought a director. He said I was very good. I was born to be an actress. And, but in actual fact, I wanted to go to university. I wanted to go, study English, to be a writer. And my father couldn't afford that. So I got angry and I said, in that case, I'll be an actress.
Right.
Well, my mother said, fine, but you have to speak German, because this all happened in Munich and I was going to an American school at the time.
Right.
And so I had to learn proper German. I was accepted in a very renowned acting school, which is in Munich, and but I only lasted 3 months because they told me, you better go. There is a big exam after 3 months, and you have to do so many soliloquies and whatever, Goethe, Schiller, Shakespeare, all of that in German, and we don't think that you'll be able to. And it's, you can't, if you don't pass this exam, then you are thrown out. So we don't want to throw you out. We want to tell you it's better to leave. Come back next year after you've really improved your German. Mm-hmm. All you have to do is have an interview with us. Before I had to do some roles for them.
Yeah.
An audition, as it were. And so I left. I said, yes, I'm sure I'll be back and all of that. But then I met an agent, and she's a very, very well-known agent in Germany. Yeah, in Munich at that time. Had all the big stars. Gerd Fröbe, Maximilian Schell, Maria Schell. God, I can't even remember them all. But I mean, really, the biggest stars of, German international stars. She's the one who represented them. And she wanted to represent me.
Oh, lovely.
So I was quite, chuffed and glad. And she found me parts immediately. So my first part, a big part, which I played, I was not yet even 20, and it was called Lana, Queen of the Amazons. Took me all the way to Brazil. I had the most awful experience on it. I was Lana, the star. They treated me so terribly.
Right.
And when I came back to Munich after finishing the filming, I said to Steffi that I'm giving up. If this is what the business is really about, no way. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I went off to America with my mother to visit my brother, who was in a hospital at that time. And I got a telegram from Steffi saying, you've got a part in London. It's a film called Traitor's Gate. You've got a very good part in that. So I'm getting the company to send you plane tickets. Well, I had to say yes, didn't I?
Oh, yes.
And that's how I then continued to be an actress. It was because of Traitor's Gate, where I had a wonderful time. People, where I realized, no, filming is quite, civilized. And working with a British crew who were amazingly polite and helpful and smiling and kind, it changed my whole image of the business. That's when I continued to act. But it was never a thing, from the question that you asked. I had to be an actress. Never. I fell into it, in actual fact.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And then, it was quite kind.
Yeah, of course. So how did the Bond film come along?
Through casting directors. Yeah. There are such people as casting directors, and then you have agents as well.
Yeah.
And the agents put you up for a film or whatever, and you meet the casting director. She thinks, that's a good person. Okay, I think, she can play such and such. Mm-hmm. We'll introduce her to the producer and the director, and that's how I got the part.
Oh, perfect.
Yep.
So how did working on the Bond film compare to what you've done before and also projects afterwards? Was it a different experience?
It was the first really big international thing, location up in the Alps in Switzerland, beautiful clothes. We were quite spoiled, staying in a very good hotel and all of that. So yeah, it was glam time. And when we weren't working, we were literally cannon fodder up the hill. Cannon being the camera cannon, because the girls were just, we were photographed every single day in different outfits, on the top of this mountain. So we were kept amazingly busy, but we all got along brilliantly well, some of whom I'm still in contact with today. Jenny Hanley and I became very good friends. Silvana I still see every now and again when we both do signings, with Jenny as well.
Yeah.
There's sometimes events that do bond signings.
Yeah.
And I'm then invited, so are they, and then we sit down and we, sign pictures for people. And, we get together and have a good natter and a glass of wine, and it's very pleasant.
How long were you in Switzerland for?
Oh, gosh, we went twice to Switzerland.
Right.
Because I can't remember why that was. Always in the same place, in a village. I can't remember the name of the little village.
Was it Miron?
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
Milan.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's right. Oh, very good.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah, we were there when there wasn't any snow, and then went back home for Christmas.
Yeah.
And came back again in January, I think, where there was a lot of snow. So it was 2 sessions, I think, all in all. It was 2 weeks and 2 weeks, something like that.
Right.
And then I had scenes to do in the studio.
Oh, you're back at Pinewood.
Yeah, that's right.
Was it? How did that sort of compare to being on location?
Well, you're working in a studio
of
instead of outside. It's ready-made, the set and all of that.
Yeah.
But there's no huge. You still do the same job. It's nearer to your home.
Yeah.
So there's. I don't know how you can explain that difference, except one might be outside and the other is inside.
I suppose you don't have to worry about the weather and that sort of thing.
Sorry?
I suppose you don't have to worry about the weather if you're in a studio and it's a bit more
no, of course
controlled.
No, and everything is there as it should be. If you're going to work indoors, but on location, you have to make that place to suit the scene, whereas in a studio, it's built for that purpose.
Yeah.
The set is built for that purpose. But on location, indoors, in a manor house or whatever, everything has got to be slightly changed to suit the story.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And you mentioned some of your co-stars. What was George Lazenby like to work with?
He was okay. I mean, he didn't bother us at all. He was fine. We made jokes about he could have better manners.
Right.
But I had no problem with him at all. He didn't have the best of reputations.
No.
And I never did a scene with Diana Riggs, so I never saw the two of them actually together. They didn't get along. But other than that, and I've seen him recently, actually. Well, recently, about 2 years ago.
Oh yeah.
There was a OHMS reunion, as it were, which was in Mirren.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we were up the top of the mountain, and Jenny was there, Silvana was there. Who else? There was another actress who was part of the thing was there. And anyway, it was it was quite fun. He could be amusing, and that was it. We got along. He was fine.
Oh, good, lovely.
Yeah.
So what was it like working with Roger Moore and Tony Curtis on The Persuaders?
Well, Roger is adorable, was adorable, I have to say. He was a wonderful person to act opposite, very, generous and kind and, helpful. And I didn't, in that episode, I didn't actually have a scene to do with Tony. It was at the very end where Tony and Roger, I think I'm trying to escape or something, and they get a hold of me.
Yeah.
But that's the only scene that I had where Tony was part of or I was part of the scene with Tony and Roger.
Yeah.
But he did witness a scene that I did with Roger, and that was in the studio. And he'd walked in, listened to what we were doing, and then when we finished the scene, he shouted out, "Finally, a beautiful woman who can act!"
Yeah.
And so I said in Hungarian, because I do speak Hungarian, "Köszönöm szépen." And he looked at me in astonishment, because Tony is Hungarian.
Yes, yes.
And anyway, so we had fun with that. I told him all the curse words in Hungarian that my mother had taught me, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But she laughed about it. She said, "But you mustn't say that in public. You must never say that in public, And he was, again, I hardly saw him, but I do think he was very sad at that time. I think he and Christina Kaufman had just split up.
Right, yeah.
And I would love to have invited him to dinner at my house, but unfortunately my husband was pathologically jealous.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't think that would make a good evening.
No.
So anyway, that was my first husband. So it never happened. But, I found him very pleasant. Lots of pot smoke,
Yes.
kind of invaded the hallways and stuff. If you walk past, he had a Winnebago, and if you walk past that, you really got the smell. You could get quite high, just standing around there.
Right.
I think he was very much into that at the time.
Yes, I think when he came over to do the sprays at the beginning of the shoot, he got arrested at the airport for having marijuana on him, I think, so...
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was quite, the newspapers at the time. I
had no idea.
Yeah, I think he had one of those reputations, really, and a lot of people said he was a bit difficult as well sometimes, but it seems like you had a good experience with him, which is great.
Yeah.
So how I take it in terms of how you got the role in The Persuaders, it's very much like the Bond film.
Through a casting director.
Because I was wondering whether...
I don't know why people think that you get parts with, it happens. Sometimes maybe you're seen doing something in a street and somebody says, "Oh, I think that person would be good for this part." Well, when you're already professional, you get jobs via your agent and via a casting director or through people that you know.
Yeah, I suppose sometimes they see your work on a film or something.
Yeah, exactly. They see your work and they think, she'd be fine for this, and that's how you get the part.
Yeah. So what was it like working with Lawrence Naismith?
I never had a scene with Lawrence Naismith.
Because I had a look at the episode yesterday just to sort of familiarise myself with it, and I think there was a brief scene of you together in England going in the mansion, but
it's a long time ago.
It's quite a brief scene, but...
it's quite a what scene?
It was quite a brief moment, but there was a brief bit, because in most of the episode is you and Roger and... Obviously, Tony's doing different stuff.
Yeah, on the whole, it's just Roger and my brother, the Swedish guy. But what was the scene with Naismith?
I think that was when you arrived at the Brett Sinclair's mansion, and I think you meet the judge going into the mansion for a meeting, or I believe. But it is very, very brief. But
that would have been very brief. So I wouldn't have very many memories about that. So.
Did you have any other memories of the other cast? You mentioned that the guy that played your brother.
Well, that's all. We never saw each other afterwards. I don't even remember his name. He was extremely blonde and blue-eyed.
Yes.
And that's all that I remember.
Because
fortunately.
Yeah.
I have not had a lot of disasters on a set,
Yeah.
No one's actually, well, I say drop dead, that's not true. Somebody did drop dead on her, who was a member of the crew.
Right.
But on the whole, I've had a very good time, so there are no stories to tell because it's very unremarkable.
What about the guy that died, the crew member? What was that on?
Well, that was on Space 1999, and he was our grip.
Yeah.
Which means he was the one, pushing the camera and whatever. And he collapsed in the bar after the filming of, the day's shooting.
Yes.
And was then taken off, and I talk about it in the book. I realized that he was dead when they picked him up because I'd never seen a head being able to loll so backwards that it virtually, the back of his head went between his shoulder blades, and that's not normal.
No, it's not.
So, I do write about it, and then, of course, we were told that he was dead. It was a very sad thing, and he was a really nice man. He was a lovely guy.
Yes.
But that's, that's the only terrible thing that I've had to experience while on a shoot that I remember.
Yeah.
And I think I remember other things.
Because obviously you worked on the TV and film. How is it different working on TV and film projects in terms of, the speed you work in, that sort of thing?
Well, I mean, I do. Television, in my day, you worked with 5, 6 cameras. You did the scene as if you were on stage. You didn't stop.
Yeah.
Close-ups were taken via the cameras. They were being directed from the gallery where the director was, and he would say, okay, go in close, camera 1, take a close-up, camera 2, now get yourself over there, to be able to pick somebody up when they're walking down a hallway or whatever. It's, in that respect, it's completely different because in the film, you cut. You say 2 lines and then you cut.
Yeah.
And then, the camera comes close or whatever. In television, it wasn't like that. It was cameras photographing a play, a moving play.
Yes.
And scenes could last 20, 30 minutes, and the camera would just be following you around all the time. You didn't stop to begin with.
Yes.
And then eventually, they did stop because tape became cheaper.
Yes.
They couldn't stop because they would cut tape, and that was very expensive. But then eventually it became a lot cheaper. And so then television became a little bit like filming, that you could cut,
Because The Persuaders was shot on film, so was that a bit different?
No, that was on film.
Yeah.
It was, exactly. I mean, it was television, but filmed television.
So did you find you had more time on that show than, say, Doctor Who or Space 99? Because it was...
I had 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I had 4 weeks on Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And we had Space was filmed.
Yes.
Wasn't television, wasn't taped.
Yeah.
And each episode took 2 weeks.
All right. Yeah. And could you just last question on The Persuaders? Do you have any memories of the director Leslie Norman?
Yeah. I think I worked with him on other things as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he was very nice. He was lovely. What else did I work with him on? Leslie Norman was... I think he did Space as well. But that would have been after.
Yes, I think you might have done... Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether it was Leslie Norman that Tony Anhalt, when he came to direct the Space,
mm-hmm.
That he called him Jaws.
Right.
Because I think, if I'm not confusing him, because he did have a way of talking where the jaw sort of wiggled and did a bit like that,
Yeah.
side to side when he talked. I'm pretty sure I'm talking about the same person. How do you know him?
Obviously he's obviously Barry Norman's father, the film critic. I've seen
Barry Norman's father?
Yeah, that's right.
Well then I think it is the same person. Yeah, the Jaws, the guy that we called. I never knew that. God. Yeah. And I knew Barry Norman.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Oh gosh, never realised. Anyway, so that's that. Oh, okay.
So I think Leslie...
He was nice, he was good, he was, I think he was quite a good director, actually.
Good. Because I think Leslie did, I think 6 or 7 Persuaders, so it was quite a regular on the show. I wanted to ask you about the Return of the Pink Panther, what that was like with Peter Sellers.
Well, that was another really, glamorous show. We, worked in the south of France and then in Switzerland and then studio and there again, I got along terribly well with Peter. He made me laugh, which was good. He liked to make people laugh.
Yeah.
And I got along very well with Blake Edwards as well. So once again, I have no great stories to tell because everything went very smoothly.
Oh, good, lovely. Because Peter Sellers did he always sort of stay in character, or was he sort of? Did you see?
No, he was himself as well.
Himself.
Oh, sure, exactly. He had a girlfriend with him on the shoot. We became very good friends afterwards.
All right.
He split up from the girlfriend, and Barry Norman interviewed me. This is while we were still filming in the south of France, and I had a long interview, which was shown on the telly.
Yeah.
I think it was before the premiere.
Right.
Before the premiere, and I didn't even see it, but Peter had seen it.
Yes.
And he rang me up, so he must have called up somebody to get my number, and said, "Oh, Catherine, how sweet, you said the nicest things about me," and I didn't pay any attention to you really, but then I was busy with Kitty, that was her name, and he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I should have paid more attention to you." I said, "It's okay, don't worry about it, we work wonderfully together, so, it's fine." And then he said, "Will you come out with me?" I don't know, it wasn't that night, 2 nights later or whatever. He said, "I've got to go to a dinner party." He said, "And the people are pretty boring." He said, "And so, I'm going to misbehave a little bit and say jokes and whatever." He said, "And I need you there as my audience." So I'll have somebody who will laugh at my jokes. So that's how we then became really good friends. Oh. And I'd get phone calls 3 o'clock in the morning because he suffered terribly from depression. He was a bit manic depressive, actually.
Right.
And I would then drive over to him, just to talk him through the depression, as it were.
Yeah.
And then he met Lynn Frederick.
Yeah.
And then we hardly saw each other again afterwards. I met him once in Hollywood because I was there for something and he was out there. And, oh yes, and then I worked with him again. What am I saying? I did, The Prisoner of Zenda.
Oh, yes, yes.
And I did that with him. I had a nice part, not opposite him because that was Lynn Frederick. And, so we had a very nice time on that. But he was already quite ill. He already had his heart, what is it called? A pacemaker.
Oh, yes, yeah.
He already had that and only could work so many hours in a day.
Yeah.
So there were occasions I had to do scenes with his stuntman.
Right.
And the stuntman could not act as well as he did.
Yeah.
So it was very difficult in actual fact. I'm afraid that the film was not the biggest of successes.
Right.
Even though it was Ian Lafreniere and Dick Clements who wrote the script.
Oh, yes.
But it wasn't a huge success.
No.
I imitated chicken in it, though.
Right.
They say that's a famous scene.
Ah.
Anyway, that's in the book as well.
Oh, lovely. That's great.
Yeah.
As I want to ask about Doctor Who and working with, say, Tom Baker, and what that was like to work on as a production.
Well, once again, Julian Glover was very, very nice. Tom Baker was fine. I mentioned that as well in the book. He was a bit smelly.
Oh.
He and Lalla Ward were having a relationship at that time.
Yeah.
And, I couldn't believe that they were a couple, in actual fact. But never mind. It just went smoothly, all of that. There's very little I can say about it. I am seen through a haze of smoke because I'd given up smoking and decided, with Michael Hayes, the director, I said, I see this character with a long cigarette holder throughout, her scene, with a lit cigarette. And he said, he said, that's okay, why not? You make that as part of your character. So it was just to get, a nicotine rush.
Yeah.
So you see me constantly with this cigarette, cigarette holder.
Yeah.
I have to say I did not start smoking again afterwards, not immediately, but I did later, yeah.
Oh, right.
No, I don't.
Yeah. Because you were saying that Lalla Ward and Tom Baker were together, that you didn't see any, that's when they were still, everything was okay, we didn't see the cracks in their relationship.
I hardly saw them.
Yeah, I saw them.
We never went out together, so you don't see, you don't see things. When they were doing scenes, I wasn't part of it, so, I had very little, I witnessed very little between the two of them, and I was told that they were a couple.
Yeah.
And
right.
I was quite surprised about that.
Right.
And they never showed it in public.
Yeah. So just last couple of questions. So what are the best things about being associated with things like Bond, Doctor Who, The Persuaders, and are there any negatives with that comes with that?
Not really. I mean, it just, I have to say, I know that sometimes if you play a particular part all the time, you will always be thought of as that.
Yeah.
That can be hurtful. It took me over a year to get another part after I did Maya in space.
Yes.
But being known for this or that, I don't think that, it's not a detriment of any kind.
No.
And as I think my career has been pretty varied.
Yes.
Not as if you're going to be completely typecast all the time.
No.
And I don't know whether you're talking about like fans get a hold of, that you are then followed. So far the fans that I've met have been delightful.
Oh, good. Glad to hear that. So what's it like being a Bond girl and being part of that world?
Well, I was only part of that world during the shooting of it. Now that I live in France, I'm called a James Bond girl because they absolutely love the Bond movies.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when they've heard that I've been in one, I've become the James Bond girl. A little bit old for it now, I have to say, but nevertheless. So, it's, if you're playing James Bond and you're living through it year after year, that is different.
Yes.
But, if you only do one, and when the filming is over, that's that.
Yes, of course.
You get back to Earth, and you get back to your life.
Yes. Because obviously, you're saying there's lots of photo shoots when you were in Switzerland. Obviously, did you have any problems with... Because a lot of the Bond girls in the 60s were more sort of eye candy. Did you have any problems with that?
I can't understand you, sorry.
I was just saying, back in the 60s, a lot of the Bond women were obviously on the posters, that sort of thing. So it's very much sort of played sort of an eye candy sort of role. Did you have a problem with that sort of side of it, or were you quite happy to sort of with the glamour side of something like Bond?
Well, I did have a proper part in it.
Yeah.
I was not just glamour.
Oh no, of course not.
Yeah. So and I mean that comes with the show.
Yes.
So you can't complain about it.
Oh no. So I'm obviously Magic Service is 50 years old. Well, next year. How do you think the film stands up, say, compared to the new
I
one?
can only say what people tell me, and they still love it, and they say that they think it's the best one.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you know, I've seen other Bond films. You know, how can I tell? I happen to love this particular Bond, but he's leaving us now, isn't he?
Yes, doing one more next year, and then that's it. Yes.
And then that's it. Okay. Because in the last one, he gives up his gun. He throws the gun into the river.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
And then goes to the woman.
Yeah.
And then I thought, that's it. He's never going to be Bond again.
Yeah, I think he's been offered a lot of money to come back. That may be why. But
oh, really?
I think it's about $25 million. I hear. So.
Wow.
Probably worth it.
And he happens to be a wonderful actor, because I've seen him in other things as well.
Oh yeah,
so
I think
good luck for him.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best ones, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And my final question, what's
because I'm going to have to go.
Oh, so sorry, I'll be very brief. So what's your favourite project that you've worked on, say, in your entire career that you're the most proud of, and why?
Well, it's very difficult to say absolutely, you know, but there is a part that I'm very grateful to have been allowed to do.
Yeah.
And that was in a television series done by Thames Television, Napoleon and Love, with Ian Holm as Napoleon.
Oh, yes.
And I played Marie Walewska, the Polish countess.
Yeah.
That he did love, that Napoleon historically did love very, very much. And she even had a child by him.
Oh, right.
And, you know, Greta Garbo played the part.
Oh, yeah.
Walewska.
Yeah.
And I was absolutely honored to be offered that role. And I have to say, I enjoyed doing it. I loved working with Ian. I actually fell in love with Ian. And, you know, I mean, it's a memory that I have, which I feel very, you know, romantic about and proud and all of that. So that is, I think, the role that I love most of all that I've played.
Yeah, it sounds a really nice role to have done, definitely.
Sorry?
It sounds like a really nice role to have played. So.
Oh, yes, so it was a beautiful role to play. You know, a historical character, she did exist. So I read up quite a lot about her. You know, it was, I mean, it was wonderful. Is it more... costume, everything. Yeah. Everything was wonderful about the show.
Is it more difficult playing somebody that actually existed, or do you...
No, I don't think so. No.
Yeah.
No, not at all. You know, you can read up on a character, do your homework, as it were, you know. No, I don't think so.
Well, that's all the questions I've got, so...
okay.
Well, thank you very much for taking time to do
but can I also, you know, the book...
Oh, yeah, yes, yeah.
A Constant Alien, and you can get so much more stories within the book.
Yeah.
And I have written another one which is going to come out, which is called When God Was Out to Lunch.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
that I'm going to England for that in June to do signings and whatever, to do the launch of that. So, you know, look out for it. It'll be on Amazon.
Yeah.
And A Constant Alien already is.
Yeah.
So, you know, have a good read.
Oh, yeah, I'll definitely get a copy, and I'll give some of the people who attend the event copies as well if I can, so I'm sure they'll enjoy reading everything. Hopefully I'll come to one of the signings in June. It'd be nice to thank you.
Oh, lovely, okay. You can look it up. You know, these are my publishers. They haven't even told me the exact event, but it's a Doctor Who event.
Oh, right.
And it happens outside of Oxford.
Yes.
In this wonderful manor house. Well, it's like a chateau, actually. So I'm sure you can find that on the internet.
Yeah, I'll have a look.
Doctor Who event outside of Oxford, 9th, 10th of June.
Oh, lovely. Yes, I'll look that up.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Well, again, thank you very much for taking the time to do
that.
All
right, not at all. And, you know, have a good time.
We will indeed. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Hi. Hello.
Hi.
How you doing? You okay?
Finally, we made it.
Indeed. Yes.
Yeah.
You having a nice week so far?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Well, in the morning, as someone from England called me,
Mm-hmm.
and he was talking with me about the James Bond pictures. It was just a sort of a fan, you know.
Oh yeah.
But it was
Yeah.
funny. But my grandchildren would be much easier with the phone and all this stuff than mine. You know, with 80 years old, you are not so accustomed to this stuff. Okay, but it works.
Oh yeah. I think it depends on people's age, but also how often they use technology. And I find that most of my guests seem to pick it up quite easily, thankfully.
Yeah.
So, but thank you very much for agreeing to talk to me about your experiences on the Majesty Secret Service. It is extremely kind of you. I've got some questions. Shall I just get started?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I was thinking that my audience would just like to know a bit more about your background. So, just wanted to ask you, what made you want to be a professional racing driver to begin with?
Oh, well, you know, I think I was born in 42. So when I grew up in the 50s, motoring was played a major part in our life. You know, after the Second World War, the first motorcycles, the first cars, engines. And I grew up actually in an industrial city called Kapfenberg, where there's a Bowler, a special steelworks. So and my father was their technical director. So I was very much accustomed to technique and interested in engines and everything together with it, you know.
Yeah. And so, what were the complexities and highlights of working on the racing sequence in the Bond film?
Well, you know, you must imagine that basically there was a horse race in the book, and I remember when I was going up to Lauterbrunnen and up to Mürren and meet Harry Saltzman, he told me this that originally in this on a Majesty Secret Service there was a horse race.
Yes,
but during this time, racing movies got very fashionable, like Frankenheimer's Grand Prix film, Lelouch, the French guy, made a film with Trintignant with car racing. So car racing came up in the film business at the end, in the second half of the 60s, was going up, the interest. So he changed the basic horse race into a car race.
Right. Yeah.
And when I met him up at the cable car station in Mürren, he had actually no idea about it. He just was asking me, Erich, can we do a car race? And I said, well, during what time of the year? He said, in winter. I said, okay, well, let's make an ice race. And neither Saltzman nor Broccoli nor Hubert Fröhlich from the production had any idea about ice races. But in Austria and Switzerland, ice races were quite popular. And also in rally driving, we drove very often in snow and in ice. And I did also rallies in Sweden and in Finland. So for me, ice racing was not a big thing.
Yeah.
And then they said, well, how can we do it? And I said, well, we have to build a racetrack. And I said, where? And then he suggested, okay, let's go down to Lauterbrunnen, because you must imagine that Mürren is way up in the mountains. And you could only reach Mürren with a cable car. So we went out into a helicopter. I remember it was an Italian Augusta helicopter, and we just flew down the rocks very steep down to Lauterbrunnen, and then there was a muddy area of grass. And then we walked around, and he said, "Okay, show me how you would like to have an ice track."
Yes.
So I took some twigs from trees, and then I just put them into the mud and said, "Okay." I built an oval. Well, the length's about 400 meters, something like this. Let's make an oval, make ice, and then we will have a race. And following the book on a Majesty Secret Service, Tracy, Diana Rigg will come with George Lazenby, with James Bond, chased by the bad Blofeld guys. They will come through the valley in the cars, and then Tracy, Diana Rigg points, "Oh, let's go down there. There's an ice race," just to get rid of the Blofeld black Mercedes. This was a basic story. And then I went home, because actually I was just driving at the TAP rally, the first Portugal rally. I was driving that day for Citroën, and on the way home, I just passed the Lauterbrunnen, and then I talked with Salzman how to get the whole thing organized. And after that, I went home to Vienna. And then I started to get organizing the cars and tuning them and drivers and stuff like this. I remember first we started with 5 cars. 3 days later, Fröhlich called me and said, "No, we need 10 cars." And after 4 weeks, it was 25 cars.
Right.
And they kept us quite busy, We had a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah. It sounds it. Were you recommended to somebody for the film? How did they find you to begin with?
How they found me? Well, that was a funny story, actually, because when Harry Saltzman decided to change from a horse race to a car race, he said to Hubert Fröhlich, "Hubert, just get someone who is organizing us an ice race and who could drive on ice and so on." Because you must imagine that at that time, the usual stuntmen in the movie business, they could fall down from horses, fall down from houses, roofs, everything. They could punch each other, but they couldn't drive cars.
Right.
In the 60s, okay? So Hubert had now to look for some car race. The funny thing was, at that time, I was driving the Kona Castrol rally. This was, at that time, the rallies were very long distance. And we were driving from Germany down to the Black Sea to Romania. 1,500 kilometers, something like this. And I was driving at this rally, and I had a major crash. In the center of Romania, I think it was Diego Mures or whatever the name was. I hit a railroad. I hit a locomotive, a train. The car exploded and all the stuff. So, and at this rail crossing, there was a German journalist. I forgot his name, from the magazine Rally Racing. This was quite a top rally magazine, periodically in Germany, monthly, like Autosport in England, a major paper. And so Hubert was calling this chief editor of this magazine, and he was standing at this rail crossing. And then Hubert said, "Yeah, we're looking for some driver who likes to do accidents." And the German said, "Yes, I know an idiot from Vienna by the name of Erich Glavitza." So Hubert called me, because I remember I was going on some morning into the office, and one of the secretaries told me, "James Bond film is calling." Well, I was calling. And he said, "Yes, forget that rubbish." Yeah? And I said, "No." And then I saw it was a Switzerland telephone number. And then at first, I was thinking it is Joe Siffert, the Formula One driver, who was a very close friend of mine, or some other Swiss guy. And then I called them, and then there was a secretary on the phone. I remember she said, yes, this is EON production, EON film production. Just a moment, Mr. Glavitza, I connect you with Mr. Hubert Fröhlich. And Hubert Fröhlich was a German, a Hamburgian film production manager. He was quite good in the business. He did The Great Escape with Steve McQueen. And, you know, he was full in the business. Hubert called me, and so Hubert came to the phone, and he said, you know, he could not speak normal. He was only shouting typisch German. And he was saying, how can you roll a car? And I answered, how often do you want? And then it was quiet for the first seconds. And then he said, okay, you can do it. I said, yes, of course. What's the problem? And he said, then I will call you tomorrow morning. And then he called me tomorrow morning and he said, okay, can I organize? He told me then the whole story. You know? They have a chase of cars and an ice track and rolling cars. And if I could do the organization. And this I did. And I earned a lot of money. But the reason why I earned so much money, because I organized the whole thing. I organized 25 cars, equipped them with special spike tires, because I had a friend in Sweden from rally driving from Carsten. I was calling him and I said, I have 25 cars, 4 wheels. I would need about 1,000 spikes per wheel, because they were preparing an ice track as hard as an ice hockey track. You know, just not snow. No, it was pickle hard, you know, very hard, glass hard ice. So you really need very, very good spiked tires. Otherwise, you would not be able to control the car. Because this, I understood that it's necessary to be very precise in controlling the car, because of the optics of the camera. You know that you are in the range where it's sharp and so on and so on.
Yeah. And what did the fact that it's quite a remote location make it difficult for you to get the cars in and set up? Did that add to the time involved?
Yeah, no, this was then very easy. Of course, it was the advantage I had, that in spring, I think in May or March or April, I met Walter Hayes. Walter Hayes was the top of the tops of Ford headquarters in England, in Brentwood, Ford headquarters. He was the general manager. I think he had the same power like Mr. Ford in America. Walter Hayes was the Ford in Europe. And I met him in Brands Hatch at the Race of Champions, because Jochen Rindt introduced me to him. You know, we were in the paddock standing around, and then Walter Hayes, and Jochen said, this is Erich also from Styria, and said, hello, Erich. So I called Walter Hayes, and this was funny because Hayes was a very powerful man. And I called him, I remember, in the morning, and they said, you know, months later. And I said, maybe you remember myself. We met together in Brands Hatch with Jochen Rindt, and Walter Hayes was so polite. I said, yes, of course, I remember you. Which was, of course, ridiculous. And I told him the story. That for the Bond film, I would need escorts. And, you know, I mean, you're actually too young. You must imagine that at those times, there was no sponsoring. There was you know, the motorsport, there was actually not so much money in it.
Yeah.
And I said, can I have the cars? And Walter Hayes said, okay, now let's talk in my office. Go to the British Airways office in Vienna. There's a ticket for you. Come tomorrow to Brentwood. And so I went to the office. They were very friendly to me. and I got the tickets on next day. Early in the morning, I flew to London. A chauffeur picked me up there, I remember, but I think the chauffeur expected a much more serious old man than myself, because I was 27 years old, long hairs, and Beatles and Mick Jagger, and the 60s, the roaring 60s. And so he picked me up, and then we went to Brentwood. Are you familiar with Brentwood, which is on the far east side of London?
Yes.
Quite a long way. We were driving. I think at that time there was a North Circular Road, outside of London, and because the A25 wasn't there at that time. So we were going to the headquarters, and I remember I was going up. There was a large building, and at the top floor there was Walter Hayes. Secretary saw me. I got immediately tea and breakfast and everything. And he was sitting there smoking his pipe, and he was very relaxed, and he said, yes, of course. And the problem was then that you are of course familiar that in England the cars have the steering wheel on the other side, like on the continent. And then he said the best thing is the cars you collect from the custom-free or duty-free zone from Ford Austria.
Yeah.
They have a large area where the cars are, which are not already from custom cleared. Yeah. So I got 20 cars from here. I just took them out. Then from Sweden, I got the spikes, and I had a workshop here. And mechanics from my rally team, and then they were preparing the tires, and then we were going to Switzerland.
So do you remember much about George Lazenby and Diana Rigg?
Yeah, well, when I approached with my team Lauterbrunnen, and we got to the hotel and everything, we were working with Peter Hunt. He was a director, and Broccoli wasn't there. There was only, Broccoli. Oh, I think Broccoli was there. And George Lazenby was there. Lazenby was there, and then the ski racers, Willy BOGNER, because Willy BOGNER did not only this ski stunts, he was also cameraman.
Yes.
And George Lazenby was there because Diana Rigg came much later. And but Lazenby was there, but he was very arrogant.
Right.
He was walking around like I don't know, like Shakespeare, no? But with all the other actors and cameramen, Peter Hunt and the other stuff, we were very close. But the thing was, you must imagine, we were only shooting at night, of course. So we went to the racetrack at around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah. And then we were running in the ice because they made every morning very, very hard, glass hard ice with ice machine like for ice hockey players. Yeah. And to drive really exact for the camera positions, and so we had to rough it up the ice. And this we did at around 4 o'clock, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and we had of course a lot of fun. Because we were just drifting and sliding and everything, and many of the English cameramen and staff, they said, "Yeah, can we go with you?" And they said, "Oh, of course, come on in." And we had a lot of fun.
And did you like Diana Rigg? Was she nice to work with?
Yes, she was a real lady. Absolute unbeliever. I fell in love with her, and I was driving her around with the car, and I was playing them very important because she had, of course, difficulty to drive this heavy Mercury car. The Mercury Cougar was 500-600 horsepower. This car was ridiculous. And, we modified a little bit the suspension. We made it a little bit softer and modified the tires and everything. And I remember when she came, then Peter Hunt asked me that I should show her how to drive on ice. No? And I said, of course, no problem. And then we went into the car and I said, yeah. And then she said, yes, she's so happy that this is an automatic car because on ice and stuff like this. And then she touched the accelerator and then she spun, of course. No? And I can't, Erich, I can't get off. So we had a lot of fun. And, then I remember one day, I thought that her husband was coming, but it wasn't true. I got later the news that it was her boyfriend. He was coming from England. And one afternoon, she said she wanted to buy a present for him. Then, so Hubert said, Erich, please drive Miss Rick to Interlaken because she wanted to buy a valuable wristwatch for her his husband or whatever. So I said, of course. And I took one. We had two Cougars there, two Mercury Cougars. One car we banked, and the other one was kept in shape. We didn't. So I took the nice car and just said, yes, let's go. And we drove to Interlaken. And then we went into a watch shop. And, the guy was kneeling down in front of her. She had to sign autographs and everything. And I'm not even sure that she had to pay for this watch. And then after that, we went for a coffee. And many people were coming to us and asking her for an autograph. And then we were driving home in the Cougar. And I drove in this valley road from Interlaken to Lauterbrunnen, where they stay, where everything is. And then there were cars coming from the other side, going on normal traffic. And suddenly she said, Erich, by the way, what's the difference between those cars and our car? And I mean, usually I would say, what do you want with that stupid question? Whether they have four wheels and I have four wheels. But I wasn't that rude, so I was more polite. And I said, well, we are in an American car, and they don't have American. And then she said, and I was asking, what do you mean with difference? And then she said, they have all number plates. And I said, yeah, well, so what? And she said, but we don't have license plates on the car, because I wasn't checking it. This car was on the parking space within the film area. And, they put license plates on when they wanted it for shooting. And I just took the car and wasn't checking whether the car has a license plate or not, And when you know how strong the Swiss police is, because they have the humor of mad dogs. So I was quite frightened and was very carefully driving back. Now she was really a great lady. I had her on the phone 3 years ago. Wait, 2019, they made an anniversary celebration in Switzerland. Lazenby was there. He was drunk every day, terrible. And getting grossed up with the waiters in the restaurant. I mean, that's stupid. I mean, so they tried to get Diana Rigg also there. And then they told me, the organizer of this party, they said, she will not come. She didn't even answer the phone and so on and so on. So I tried her on the phone and I said, do you remember me? And then she said, oh, yes, of course, God, tortures the car. But she was already in a wheelchair.
Right.
And she said she's doing some theaters on the stage, but she can hardly walk, and she's very sick, and she's very sorry that she can't come, and so on. And it was very sad, because she was such a beautiful and charming lady, and she had this fine, brilliant British humor.
Yes.
So really fantastic. Lazenby, he was an idiot. I mean,
yeah, I was at that event actually. I did the Portugal bit and the Switzerland, and I did notice him drink quite a lot in Portugal, and had a bottle behind his chair at an auction and stuff. And
there was also Harry Saltzman's son.
Yes.
At this celebration, I told you, no? There was Saltzman's son.
Yeah.
He coming late and drunk already on the first day.
Yeah.
And these two were drinking from the morning. I remember when I was coming down with my girlfriend for breakfast, these two were already sitting at the bar every day. And when we made this big celebration up at the Schildhorn, they had Lazenby was there, but they had to go down with him at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But the party started at 8, because at 5 o'clock in the afternoon he was so drunk, so it was impossible to have him up there. So they went with the cable down. It was terrible. I hate this drunken, this alcoholic shit,
I think most Bond fans are quite upset that he didn't do more films. But after what I saw in Portugal and Switzerland, I sort of felt, well, yes, he was very good in the film, but you needed somebody a bit more professional like Roger Moore, and I'm quite glad he didn't do any more, because I think it could have been difficult.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, a Broccoli. Wait a minute. After the shooting, when they already broke up with him, I was meeting Broccoli in London at the EON studios in his office. And then he told me that they just fired him. Yeah. And he told me that they were talking with him. Peter Hunt was talking with him, that he was not at this moment a very good professional actor, but they said, okay, there is some talent, and they would finance him to get teachers, to get better and better. But he just he let grow a beard, and then he said, yes, James Bond film, this is not very fashionable, and we must be much more society critical, and rubbish like this. It was terrible.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to him, I think he did get some bad advice from a few of his inner circle. But I think I think he was only 28. I think if you think back to what we were like at 28, I suppose we weren't quite as.
How old is he? Well,
he's now 80, I believe.
Like me, is he born in 42? No?
I would have to double check, but I think he's.
Yeah, no, it's not important. But I just think you're right around 80. Whether he's 81 or 79 doesn't matter.
Yeah, so something around then. I think he's actually retired from public appearances. I don't think his health is that great, from what I understand. But I did want to ask you, because you actually appear in the film driving. Was it always the intention that you would be on screen, or did that kind of develop as you were sort of making the sequence?
Well, I think no. I think, look, at that time, it was only that I organized the car and make the car chase.
Yeah.
And after finishing, we just went home with a lot of money. But we which are, then the Ford Motor Company picked up the cars with the transporter because they were all banked up, of course.
Yeah.
And then I did racing. I raced again in Austria. I raced. There was a deal with Colin Chapman. I got a Lotus 47. And this is a prototype sports car, Group 4 car. And I raced with it. I won some races in Italy, but then the car was, we got rid of it. And then Hubert Fröhlich already contacted me, I think in late summer 69, whether I'm available in 1970. Because he's just negotiating with Steve McQueen about a project Le Mans film.
Yes. Yeah.
And then so, yeah.
And what was it like to work on that picture?
From my side, it was actually very positive. I think that all the drivers, you must imagine there were two different sets. There was the number one set with actors, Sigi Rauch and the girls and the Fred Haltiner, the Swiss actor and French actors. And then there was a second unit. The second unit was cars, special action as a stunts, and car driving. And I must say that we as drivers had a very good relationship with Steve. But of course, Steve was, you must imagine, he was at that time number one in the world. He was the highest paid superstar. But we had the director John Sturges from the Magnificent Seven, very famous.
Yeah.
And John Sturges also was directing the Great Escape with Steve McQueen and Charles Bronson and this war, prisoners of war breaking out and stuff like this.
Yeah.
And I think after 2 months there was a rising tension, a fast tension between Sturges and McQueen. Because I had also a very good and warm relationship with Sturges because I always was asking him about film history. And how was it, the Magnificent Seven? Then he said, yes, this was actually, the basic was the Seven Samurai, what was the basic for it? And then he told me these background stories. No? And we were always sitting together in lunch. And he was asking me about Austria and stuff like this, and I was asking him about film and film history. And we had a book writer, Ken Purdy. Ken Purdy was a book writer of the famous Sterling Moss book, All But My Life. Sterling Moss, you are familiar with him?
Absolutely, yes.
Pardon?
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, I know Sterling Moss, yeah.
And Ken Purdy was writing the standard Sterling Moss book, All But My Life. And he was supposed to be the book writer for the Le Mans racing film. Ken Purdy. And Ken Purdy, actually, I was also very often talking with him and pretty close with him. And he told me that his idea was actually, you might not be familiar with a racing driver of the 50s by the name of Deportago.
Right, yeah.
He was a Portuguese billionaire, and he had a relationship, I think, when I'm right, with an American movie star by the name of Williams, or like a tit star, with large breasts, and he had a major crash at the Mille Miglia. This Deportago with 11 dead. With like spectators, there were 11 deaths. Many kids within. Yeah. So Ken Purdy actually wanted to make a story, a Le Mans story, a little bit, with a movie star and stuff like this, and girl with big tits and stuff like this. And Steve said no, and was getting crossed up with John Sturgis, and said, no, I don't want this shit. And I remember I was driving with Steve in his Porsche 911, the Mulsanne, the Unadier straight down to Mulsanne. And he was driving, and then he said, I want to make the real racing film, a documentary how racing is. I don't want to make any sex bombs on the guardrail, and then two racing cars come. One of the driver sees these tits, and then his engine goes, it goes faster. Not with me. And I remember that Steve said, he was asking me, are you familiar with Truman Capote? Cold Blood, no? And I said, yes, of course, because that. No? And he said, yes, this I want. I want to make a documentary where as a spectator or reader, you are not on one side, you just see the reality. No? You don't find either the murder or the victim sympathetic. So just a documentary, like Truman Capote, like Cold Blood. And then we went down to the Mulsanne corner, and then we were stepping out, and he said, before the Indianapolis passage on the Le Mans circuit, after Mulsanne, here I would like to have the first accident. And he told me, and this was quite realistic, that he said, on the northern part, this is dry, because the track is around 10, 11 miles long. Yeah? And the northern part is dry, and here in the southern part is wet because it's raining. And the race cars are still on dry tires, and then start, the accidents. Then? And they said, okay, here I'd like to have a Lola T70 across the street, and you come with a Porsche and you just avoid him, you touch him slightly, and then comes the series of accidents, bis down at Maison Blanche, the White House, where then the major accident is done. I mean, the advantage of this whole thing was that Steve was a racer himself. Although I think that he was a much better motorcycle racer, off-road racer, than a car racer. I mean, on the other side, he was already 40 years old. And with 40 years and with kids and wife, you don't want to end your life in the fire, in flames. No? But he could drive a car quite fast, not race fast, but quite fast. But still, I think motorcycle off-road, because he was riding the 6 days in the national team of the United States, and so on. He was very good off-road. I bought from him a Husqvarna 400. I bought from him because he had a Husqvarna 400 flown from Sweden to Le Mans, only for him in a Learjet. They flew with a Learjet up to Husqvarna, which is about Stockholm, put in a motocross motorcycle, and then he flew down. You must imagine. And then he was just riding a little bit with it, not much. And I watched him, and suddenly he stopped with his car beside me, and he said, you want to drive? You want to ride? with the shades up, the sunglasses up, like he was very, very relaxed. And then he said, you want to try? And, I just played around a little bit with it. And then he said, you can have it. I sell it to you. And for a couple of $100 or something like this, I bought his Husqvarna. And I started actually a motorcycle race career, because the following year, 1971, I quit with car racing and started motocross. And I was riding motocross professionally, the ISDT in the Austrian national team till I think 1981, something like this. Huh?
Do you have any further memories of the director John Sturgis at all?
Well, during Le Mans.
Oh yes.
Yes, yeah. I met him every day. Actually, I met him every day because it was called Solar Village. Solar Village was a little village made out of wooden cabin houses and camping cars for the actors and stuff like this. And there they had the technical equipment, the cameras, there were the racing cars, every stuff was in Solar Village. And there we had a large tent, very large tent, was a restaurant where everybody had lunch, we all had lunch together. And there were funny people. I remember there was the owner of the Whiskey A Go-Go Club. He was traveling with Steve around, a dark red face. I think he was swimming in whiskey every day. And I remember him, I met him and I said, yes, I'm from Austria. And then he said, he said, do you know Salzburg? And they said, oh, of course. And they said, in Salzburg, I married my 7th wife. And they said, yes, very interesting. And they said, we had one thing in common. We hated each other right from the start. I still remember him. And he was hanging around. There were many funny friends around Steve McQueen. You know, typically these American stars always come surrounded with 30s. We call them claqueurs. You know, they always applaud. When the actor is making a joke, nobody would laugh, but they're making a big noise, you know? And Steve was surrounded. And then his wife came later, Neil. This was the next tragic thing, because Neil was coming. And on one Sunday, I went to a motocross close to Le Mans on Sunday, and I took Steve's son, Chet. You know, he was 9 years or 10 years old, something like this. And I thought, and on the next day or day after, Neil saw me in the lunch tent and was coming to me and said, yes, thank you, Erich, it was very nice. You were taking a chat with him. So Steve and I, we had time to be alone and so on, stuff like this. And then she was asking me from Vienna and Salzburg and the usual thing you ask about Austria. Huh? And then suddenly she asked me, Salzburg, and then she asked me whether I know the actor Maximilian Schell. And I said, yeah, just peripheral, because I was a race driver, and usually as a race driver you are stupid like a piece of wood. You don't know really actors, no? Or any cultural things. And I said, yes, I know him, but in Austria more famous because Maximilian Schell was already living in Hollywood at that time. Also, but his sister, Maria Schell, is quite famous in Austria. No? And she did, so yeah, from where Maximilian Schell is and so on. And I was actually, I don't know much about him. Days later was a big catastrophe. The police was coming. You must have following. Steve and Neil were getting high in their castle where Steve was staying. You know, he was staying in a very nice castle outside of Le Mans. And they smoked or whatever. They got high. And then Neil said that she's pregnant. Do you know the story?
No.
Okay. She said that she's pregnant. Yeah, and this is nice. They're getting a third child because they already had a daughter. She was she must have been at that time around 14. She's already dead. I was reading, overdosed or something like this. She died with 40 when she was 40 years old. But at that time she was 14 or 13 years, and then there was Chad, and now they were expecting a third child. And when Hubert Fröhlich told me this story, I'm telling you now. And then, yes, we're getting a child, and Steve, they were already high and were very happy. Then he was asking, yes, and how many months? And she said, yes, she's in the third month. And then suddenly Steve was thinking about that during this time, they were not together.
Right.
You don't know the story?
I don't know.
Okay. So, and then they got crossed up, and he was saying, who is the father of it? No? And it went up, and he was beating her. I mean, this is terrible because Neil was a very tiny, little, slim lady, and Steve was like a Spanish bull, yeah? So he was beating her up, and he was even drawing his revolver. You know, he always had a gun with him since the Manson story. You know, he was always carrying a gun. He was pointing a gun, beating her up, and so on. And then she said that Maximilian Schell was the father. So this is the circle, you know. When she was asking me, "Are you from Austria?" Oh, very nice. Do you know Maximilian Schell? No, I don't know him. Because, you know, I was 27. I was an idiot. And so next day, the police was coming. It was very dramatic. Hubert told me the whole story. The police was coming. Neil was picking up the kids, was going to Paris, was asking for an abortion, but then she went to London, and there they made the abortion, and she was going back to the United States, filed the divorce. And actually, this was what Hubert told me, that after the film in winter, Steve was bankrupt. He had no money. And the reason was, it was in the middle of the shooting, it must have been in July or something like this, was that the film production stopped completely, came to a halt, because John Sturges was saying, I'm not interested anymore in this film, and I go home. And he was going, and then I remember CBS was coming, there were some managers coming with Learjets, and then they're saying, okay, the whole thing stopped. And then they were discussing with Steve, and the solution was that he was getting no money. He should have gotten $1 million US. But they said they will only continue when he doesn't get any money. And if he does not agree, then John Sturges is coming back with Robert Redford. Yeah, this was in summer. There was a big discussion, and now it's over. And yeah, tomorrow we will go home and stuff like this. But we stayed there, and then there was also a change in the staff, because the French Union, insisted that the camera teams and you know, all these working teams, they must be French. And you can now imagine the American were going home, the cameraman, all the stuff. Now the French cannot speak English. They can speak English so well as I cannot speak North Korean. Yeah? So, and the Americans are not very famous for being the most patient people in the world. So you can imagine what's going on. They were shouting at each other, asshole, and shut up. And then we got a new director, Lee Katzin. Lee Katzin was actually, he was quite nice, but he wasn't very experienced. Steve was doing with him what he wanted, actually. You know, and I remember one day when Steve was shouting at him, you can kiss my ass in Macy's showroom, and like things like this. Was terrible. And you must imagine, the shooting ended in November, and Steve's closest friends from the film production, like Bob Reilly, Jack Radish, you know, with them he made Bullet and stuff like this. They did not speak a word with him. They just went home. And I was pretty close with Bob Reilly because he was married with a Viennese wife, a woman, and I sometimes was bringing from her parents stuff to Bob and back and forth and so on, and they just quit their friendship. Yeah, Bob really said until my days. On Jack Radish said, I remember because I called him when I was in the United States, 73 or something like this, and I was talking about, and when I said Steve McQueen. Because at that time I already had my business and was Kawasaki distributor in Austria. This was my new company I formed after the film. Because this was the reason also I quit with movie business and concentrated on this business. And when I was in the United States, in Los Angeles, I called Jack Radish in Utah. Because I had a close a connection with him because he was a ski racer, a former ski racer for the U.S. national team and Olympic ski and stuff like this. And he was very often at the Arlberg in Vienna for skiing. And I was calling him, and as soon as I said the word Steve McQueen, he stopped and said, "Who do you mean? I don't know. Who's that guy?" I mean, it's a pity because before they were very close friends. Really close friends and buddies, you know, like you say in England. Then they were really buddies, and they broke up completely.
Oh, that's a great shame, isn't it?
Yeah, really, yeah. I mean, Steve was actually broke after this adventure because the divorce cost him over $2 million. It was at that time, 1970, was like 20 now.
Yeah.
And it was very much. Then the IRS wanted from him, I think, also $2 million. And he was getting no money out of the film. He also had to take the costs, his living costs there, and the castle and everything. I think it was Hubert who told me when I met him then in 71 or 72 that Steve was broke. And he was, I met the German actor, now what was his name? Scheiße. With whom I drove in the film the Ferrari, actually, the Sigi Rauch. He was actually the number 2 actor behind Steve McQueen and also a major actor. No? And I met him in Bad Tölz, and he told me that in the winter 1970-71, suddenly Steve McQueen was standing in front of his door in Bavaria. Yeah, because Sigi was living there in a little farmhouse. And then he stayed 2 or 3 weeks in his house. He was alone and was bringing Sigi's children to the school and stuff like this. And he was completely different. And then actually he made with Ally McGraw Getaway. Getaway. I think Getaway saved him.
Yeah.
No? Getaway was the next film project, and with Ally McGraw. He married Ally McGraw. He beat her also when he was high and drunk. Then he divorced, and then in his final years, must be he died 1980, I think, when I remember right.
Yes.
And I think from 76 on, he was married. He married a mannequin which was 24 years old, or 23, and then he died from cancer, which he got when he was at the Marines, at the U.S. Navy.
I was just looking Stephen Queen up, and yes, it was 1980 he died.
1980, yeah.
7th of November. Yeah.
He was born in 1930 and died with in 1980. Well, it was a sad story, and especially when you know his life, he was coming actually. His mother was a prostitute. His father never showed up, and he was growing up at his grandparents. I think Neil told me this because I remember when we were talking in this restaurant in Le Mans, and I said, yeah, Steve McQueen, when he was young, that he was going to motorcycle races and earning money there. And she said, what? What, a motorcycle? He couldn't even afford a bicycle. I was earning money. I was feeding the family. He was that poor. He had nothing. And she said, also during the first years when he had a role on a TV series, a Western series, he got no money. She said, actually, after the Magnificent Seven, then it started, and then he became the star.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just going back to James Bond for a moment.
Yeah.
Were you very happy with how the sequence ended up? Were you happy with? Was there anything you would have liked to have changed, or was it kind of pretty much as you'd hoped it turned out?
What do you mean? What change?
Oh well, after you finished filming the scene, were you happy with it? Would you have liked to have done anything differently, or do you think it holds up as a really good sequence?
No. You know, at this time I was absolutely unexperienced, and Peter Hunt was such a strong personality, and I remember him. He was very well. He spoke a wonderful English. You know, like in England, I remember from my racing days, only the Pierce Carriage family was speaking this fine Oxford, Cambridge, Eton College English, you know. And Peter Hunt was very, very elegant and explained it to me, and I just was following him what he said. He just sometimes asked me, the final role of the Mercedes, no? Because the number one story was, when you remember the section, you know, when Lazenby was telephoning in his telephone box.
Yes.
Now, here starts actually the car scene, no? Because he was telephoning, and suddenly the Blofeld guys are coming and shooting at him. No? And then he's running out. Diana Tracy is sitting in the Cougar. He's jumping in, and then they go back and with squeaking tires. And I said to Broccoli that, and also to Peter Hunt, that's rubbish. And he said, why? And he said, that because tires don't squeak on ice and snow. That's impossible. And then they both were looking at me, and I think Broccoli said, Erich, number one, nobody knows it. Number two, nobody cares. I remember it. And it's true. All my friends who who were seeing the film, nobody says something. You know, when the tires are creaking like they are on tarmac. And this was the section. Yeah, and we were discussing it always. You know, Peter Hans said he wants this and he wants that, and I said no problem. Then there were only some small things where I recommended, and then of course it was also very stupid. The rollover of the Mercedes, because this type of Mercedes is 220 diesel car. You know. Sometimes you even are with a bicycle, you are faster than this car. Yeah. In those days, because at that time there were no turbos. Now the diesels are quick, but at that time the diesels were gone terrible. No? And because the escort roll, this was quite understandable. No? Because you say, yeah, this is a race car, and it's getting a little bit sideways, and then it's rolling. No? Then you say, okay, but the Mercedes rolling on an ice track, that's ridiculous. So I think Peter Hans said first the escort roll, and then the Mercedes. We crashed the Mercedes. And I said, no, we can go into the barrier. But that's not very spectacular. And I remember Peter Hunt was thinking, and he was always playing with his hands here. And then he said, yeah, can you roll the car? And I said, Peter, a Mercedes 220 diesel on an ice track rolling, how do you think that's impossible? This car is hardly going 50 miles an hour, and it's terrible. Yeah, but can you? And then I'm not sure whether I had the idea or one of my friends had the idea that, okay, we make it that way, that, you know, we have this barrier on the outside of the racetrack, and then we make we cut this wooden barrier, and behind we make a wedge. Let's say 1 foot wide, a wedge was going up. And then in front, we make a barrier, but out of plywood. Not of heavy, so out of plywood. And then we said, okay, we drive this Mercedes into the barrier, and the front wheel is catching this wedge, and then it's coming and it's turned on the roof. And this would be the solution. I remember we were very happy that we had this idea. So we went to Peter Hunt. I said, yeah, oh, very nice. And then we were talking with some of the mechanics, the Swiss guys, you know, which are working with wood and everything. And then we cut in the ice behind, actually, where the spectators are standing. We made a wedge, which raising up. And then the barrier, we made this section out of plywood. And then we were discussing it, how is this realistic? Because the Mercedes will not go straight into it and having fun rolling the car. There must be a reason. And we said, okay, the Mercedes was behind the Cougar from Diana. Yeah, better so. It's behind the Cougar. And they were shooting, and then the Mercedes is coming on the outside about in one line to the Cougar. And in between, I think an Escort or a Mini, I'm not sure, some of the race cars we put in between, and we say, okay, the driver pushes the car in between against the Mercedes, against the race car. The race car bangs into the Mercedes sideways, and from this punch, then the Mercedes, then we had to work it out that it's exact, not because there was only a small part in the barrier. I have to hit with the right front wheel to get the wedge and the turnaround. But it worked very, very nice. We had only one try, and I remember when Peter Hanley, okay, guys, let's have some tea. And then, because it was minus 40 centigrade.
Wow.
Every night.
I
It was over.
Yeah. I thought Peter Hunt was always very. He started off as an editor, and of course, the editing in the film is really inventive. Particularly when I think it's the car that you're driving flips over, and he reverses the shot of you driving normal way and puts you upside down.
This how they cut it. I think Hubert told me that some slides they were from the lab in Paris. They ruined them. Then they had only one version, and they had to redo it and stuff like this. In the 60s, nowadays they do films with handies. But in the 60s, you have this very heavy reflex. And I remember also at the Le Mans picture when we made shots high speed. The high speed was only going 10 seconds.
Right, yeah.
Because in 10 seconds, the film was through. And within the 10 seconds, when you were coming with the car, the timing has to be exact, perfect. And you could not, also in Le Mans, you couldn't do it a second time.
No.
Because the Lola was on fire or whatever. Then.
So back then you had to be quite inventive in how things were done, it sounds like. The Bond films have always had a very good stunt team. And I think George Leach was the stunt arranger for the film.
Fantastic, great. They were doing. I was watching the cable car stunts, and then there was a story with a guy who lost a leg at another Bond film. There was a cameraman. There were special effect people. Even the Switzerland ski racer Russi got hurt in one of the ski stunts. But it was quite, and Leach and his guys, there was because I was coming pretty close to him, the name, I think George Cooper or John Cooper was his name. He was an ex-professional boxer. This knows, he was a very, very nice guy. And this team around Leach, I met Leach 2 years ago or 3 years ago, at this festival in Switzerland, Bond. There was Leach there, and he's in fantastic shape.
Well, George Leach, he did die a few years ago, so I wonder whether it might be Vic Armstrong you're thinking of, because Vic Armstrong did a lot on A Man's Secret Service, and he's actually married to Wendy Leach, George Leach's daughter. I think
Leach must be older than I am, no?
I'll just quickly look him up a second. So George Leach, I
remember that he was maybe, well, I was 27 and Leach was maybe 30, 35, something like this. So he must be now 80, 85, 87.
Well, George Leach was born in 1921 and he died in 2012, at the age of 90.
No, who? George Leach?
George Leach, yes. George Leach is.
Who was the head of the stuntman?
Well, he was the stunt arranger, but a guy.
No. I mean, who was the captain of the stuntman? Because I think I met him 3 years ago.
Yeah, that I think you're thinking of Vic Armstrong.
Maybe, yes.
Yeah, he was born in 1946, and coincidentally, Vic Armstrong.
He's younger than me now.
And Vic is actually married to George Leach's daughter Wendy, and they were both at the event in Switzerland. So yeah, I think it's Vic Armstrong we're thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, then George Leach, I can't remember. I just can't really by name remember Cooper.
Yeah.
Because we're doing some boxing training, and then the head of the British stuntman. I think was he an Australian or someone? I'm not sure whether he really was from England.
Well, I'm just thinking. Cooper, George Cooper, we're thinking of.
George Cooper. Yes,
yes, and he was.
He was a heavyweight professional boxer.
Yes, I think
he knew Henry Cooper, and he knew all these guys, but he was not related to Henry Cooper.
No. So predominantly it was people like George Leach, Vic Armstrong. I take it they kind of let you get on with your stuff because you were the experts in your field. So they didn't really have much to do with your sequence at all.
No. They were doing this heavy stuff on the cable car.
Yeah.
Hanging on the cable car. And then I'm not sure whether you are familiar with this sad story of the guy from the helicopter. Are you familiar with that story?
I am. Yes. It was Johnny Jordan, wasn't it? Who was the
he lost his leg. At the helicopter stand in Hong Kong or in China, Bond film.
Yeah. It was shot over Japan for You Only Live Twice, but they did shoot some in Japan, some in Spain.
Yeah. And he was standing there when we were breaking in the ice track.
All right. Yeah.
He was standing there, and then one day he asked me whether he could go with me in the car. Fun, not just for fun. He said, "Yeah, of course, come in." And then I saw that he was limping, not walking straight. So I asked him whether he had broken his leg here, because many British guys were breaking legs and arms and elbows because the ice track. Huh? And he said, "No, I didn't break." And I said, "No, what happened?" I lost my leg. My leg was cut off by a helicopter.
Yeah.
I said, wait a minute, what happened? Yes, we were shooting in the air, and he was hanging down at the helicopter, and then it started to swing. Well, that was the story he told me. He started to swing in the air, and then he saw it coming, and he was filming it.
Yeah.
Was filming it. I remember he was filming. Yes, I was filming when my leg was cut off and so on. So, okay. Then, we got close friends because every day he was going with me in my car. And then, I had good friends in England, in Woking. I was staying there, racing in England and so on. So we were very close. And all of a sudden, I said, yeah, we wanted to meet again together somewhere out when I'm in England and he's somewhere there. But then it didn't work out because then he had the next shooting. And you know what happened? At Catch 22, he felt his widow was calling me. This was actually the time I was in tears. It just hit me. He was actually filming, how the bombs were falling down. And then at that moment, he lit a cigarette and put him loose from the safety belt. I mean, unbelievable. He put him loose from the safety belt, lit the cigarette, and then there was a turbulence, and he fell down through the bomb bay.
Yeah.
But terrible. Really. It was the same when Mike Halewood's widow called me and said, "Erich, Mike had an accident. A truck was turning in the mist and on the highway and cut his head off." It was unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, the bravery that these people had, it's very dangerous work, and the admiration you can't prevent.
And he was so nice. I mean, we had so much fun. You know, when I was driving, Erich, hit him, come on, hit him, and boom, I went in the other car, and yeah, and he know that I like English very much, and and I always felt very comfortable when I'm in England, and I always stayed at my friend in Old Woking. And then I told him every night when I go to bed, I had this hot water bottle.
Yeah.
In the bed, because Mo's wife always was thinking that I'm dead because it was so cold. No, it was it hit me very much. It really was a sad story, because he was such a nice man. And actually, from our film, everyone is dead. I mean, Peter Hunt is already dead.
Yeah.
Saltzman.
Harry Saltzman. Did you have much to do with Harry Saltzman, or was he sort of more behind the scenes?
No. Saltzman actually. Saltzman was with whom I made the first talks. You know, when I was coming from Portugal, I had a conference with him, Harry Saltzman, this little stocky man. And then we were flying down with this helicopter from Merlin and then we were walking on, and we were telephoning very often. I remember that he was always asking, how do you imagine? No? Have you such a fantasy? Can you imagine the cars? No? And then I flew to Switzerland and told him, a racetrack is looking that way. We make a chicane on the back straight, and so you can make with camera. Broccoli came actually much later. And we were already in the shooting process. But Saltzman I meet every time I was there, actually. No? Also a cup of coffee and so weiter. No? Then I remember when I was going up to his office, good old Vienna is here, and so on.
So you got on very well with both of them. It sounds like.
Yes, I had with everyone. I was also at the Le Mans film because I was not that important. You know, I wasn't that important that someone had to be jealous or angry with me, no? Because I was not a real actor. Because the actors at Le Mans, they were all grossed up. Everyone was everyone, yeah. And I had my girlfriend, my motorcycles, and they was coming. Steve said, "Oh, there you go," and all the Americans, the whiskey go guy. The more one day he told me, the whiskey, the friend of Steve McQueen. No? Then he said, "I bought me an aeroplane."
Right.
And I bought me an aeroplane. And then he said, "Yeah, did you enjoy?" And then he said, "The more I flew, the more I knew that I know nothing about." He was drunk from early morning bis evening, bis night. And then all of a sudden, even though he was the owner of the famous Whiskey Go-Go Club in Hollywood. And there were many funny guys like this around. Steve McQueen, he brought from America with him. And some of them were coming with their own Learjets and stuff like this. Hello? Yeah.
I mean, would you have liked to have done more film work? Because of course you did 2 fantastic films. Would you have liked to have done some more?
Yeah. We have done some films with German productions, but there was a big difference. I mean, money-wise, in everything. And when you're really done films with the big guys, number one Hollywood, Jack Reddish, Steve McQueen, and all the guys, and also James Bond. Then you have difficulties with the Austrian productions. Because when they have a problem, then the camera, the cable doesn't work and stuff like this, and also the money. And of course, the thing was actually the major turnaround for me was because I wanted to make a race team because I was very close to Niki Lauda. Yeah.
Yep.
And Peter Huber, Niki Lauda, and myself, we wanted to make a race team after Le Mans, a Formula 2 team. And there was Peter Gessin. I'm not sure whether you are familiar with him. He was a BRM Works driver, a good friend of mine. He organized for us Formula 2 cars, and we're pretty everything organized. And all of a sudden, my partner Peter Huber, we were driving to Paris with our girlfriends, and Peter suddenly said, "Is it really necessary that we continue car racing?" And I was surprised. I said, "Yeah, why not?" Now, and it was the time. This was around late October, so the 5th September when Jochen Rindt got killed in Monza. And I was pretty close with him, was already behind us, and it made us really think. And Siffert, there was courage burned. There were so many young guys getting killed. Silvio Moser, Happy Müller, everyone got killed. Then Peter said, "Erich, you never had any money. Now you really have," because he's from a very wealthy family. Niki Lauda, Niki was coming from a very, very wealthy family. No? And he said, we all had always a lot of money. You never had money. It's all of a sudden you have a lot of money and we want to do car racing. No? And I remember when he said, when we have an accident, it's not necessary that you always get killed. What is when you're in a wheelchair and you are blind? Like, I remember I was looking to him and I was thinking, "Are you crazy?" And he said, "Yeah, this is an option. You have to think about it. I mean, when you are dead, it's already dark. But what is when you are crippled, your life?" And we were going to Paris, and actually Steve made us to motorcycle fans because he had, I think, 3 Norton motorcycles there, Triumph motorcycles, Bonneville, and many Kawasaki's. He had 15, 20 motorcycles there. And then he said, "What?" Because in France, motorcycle was always getting high in sales, everything, yeah? Not so much in Austria, but in France already. And he said, why not make a shop with motorcycles? No? And we went to Paris with our girls and saw a motorcycle shop and everything. And then we were writing to Kawasaki a letter. We are the greatest and we want to distribute Kawasaki's, and if you want, we are the only guys. And all suddenly in because I was driving the Dunturi Rally, the Polar Rally 1971 in January, up at the Polar Circle in Finland for Porsche Finland. But this was my last car adventure. And in April, 2 Japanese managers were coming. And he said, oh, young people, you want Kawasaki? Oh, we are coming. And we said, yes. And then we bought 10 Kawasaki motorcycles, and then we made an office, and then we became the distributors. And it was quite successful, the company. Really must say. We were either number 1 or number 2 against Honda in Austria. We were very aggressive and quite famous, the film star Steve McQueen and stuff like this. And I sold my company in 95. And as Dieter Mateschitz, the founder and owner of Red Bull, Mateschitz, yeah, he was sitting near me in the high school in Styria. So we were quite close. And when I sold my company, I met him. We met occasionally sometimes, and then he said, "Okay, come to my company." So then, a couple of years, I was working for Red Bull Austria. I even, because for me was the English market. He said, "Erich, you can speak English. You like England." English market. And on the north side of Hyde Park, somewhere there was the office of Red Bull England. There were two young guys, and I was meeting them, and we were going dinner, and girls, of course. It was a great time always, of course. And in 2000, then I was going to Franz Wurz, the father of Alexander Wurz, the Formula One, ex-Formula One driver. Yeah, and I was close. I was very close with Franz because we raced together and we were rallying together. And he was the head of the driving perfection center here in Vienna. For driving trucks, buses, and so. And then he took me, and until I was going into the pension scheme when I was 65. And now I'm just writing books.
Oh, lovely! Is it about motor racing? I assume the book.
Yes, I was writing a book about Jock and Rindt. I even got 2 prizes, one in England for best whatever, and German also in Germany about Jock and Rindt.
Oh, wonderful.
And it sells very good. And then I've written a book, Flat Out or Nothing. It's about actually my life and my stuntman story and rally driving and stuff like this. And then I write crime.
Oh, yeah. Is that again set in Austria? Was that kind of do you set them in Austria, your crime novels, or is it sort of
Yes, of course. I mean, you write a story about people and in your novel you make murders out of them or policemen or whatever, but usually it's always about because where you have been, and from this you can write exactly. And not some fiction, which is more or less rubbish. I'm writing books and having fun.
Oh, that sounds lovely. And I suppose the nice thing about being involved with James Bond is you do get to go to these events sometimes, and it must be quite nice to be part of the James Bond family.
Of course, yes, it was very, very nice. You must imagine there were from the Bond girls from this film, from On Her Majesty's Secret Service. There were these 7 girls, which were then flying with bacteria around the world. Stuff. It was this funny story, but there are only 4 alive, and they don't look, of course, as they used to be. No? I mean, the black one, which was so pretty. In those days, which is like big and can hardly. I think she's even in a wheelchair because her son.
That's Silvana Henriquez you're thinking of, and
maybe yes.
She lives actually about an hour from me. Funny enough.
Really is. And, but she can hardly. Was very slow moving, and her son is supporting her. No?
I think she does have some. I think she does have some health issues. I did see her at a Bond event in October, and she was pretty good, and she was with her husband, and so I'm hopefully going to interview her maybe later in the year, just to go up and see her in person, hopefully.
No, it was very nice meeting up there at Schildhorn. One of the women, I forgot her name. She's very pretty. She even showed me that in the French magazine Louis, there were some nude pictures of her, but she's still very pretty. Because my girlfriend, I had her with me, my girlfriend here from Vienna, she was very jealous. No, and there were, I think there were four women out of these 7 girls and well, George Lazenby drunk. Well, and it's only and from the film stuff, cameraman's no one alive. And also some old guys from Switzerland were there who could hardly remember.
I think for us fans, we forget it's over 50 years ago. So people's recollections aren't necessarily going to be that clear after all those years. But there isn't that many people left, as you say. I mean, John Glenn, the second unit, still going.
No, that's right. Yes, of course. It's a very long time ago, man. It changed so much. I mean, I could hardly find the place where we made the racetrack down there in Lauterbrunnen, because there are so many houses now built. And Hubert Fröhlich the end was quite tragic. He died in Lauterbrunnen, and he was very poor. No money, and I met his widow. She's living in Bavaria, near Bad Tölz, and I was visiting her in her flat, and she had some pictures, and she wanted to give it to me, but I said, please keep it. Don't sell it to some idiots, because they just also want to sell it, so you at least have some memories from Hubert. And I think in Bad Tölz she's living. And great history.
I mean, my final question for you is: do you have any other highlights of your racing career that you would like to mention? Maybe your proudest moment.
Yeah, in the 60s, I was, of course, through the stuntman, and in a rally, I was quite good, and I had quite a good name here in Austria, and many newspapers they were behind me. Now I'm 80 years, but some of these journalists, they're already dead. But on the other side, I mean, to be honest to you, I can't really understand the whole thing. There were so many friends killed. I know Bruce McLaren very well. Bruce was holy. He was one of the nicest guys ever in the world. And Jack Brabham told me how it happened. It's so ridiculous that you say the whole racing shit should be stopped immediately, because Bruce was testing one of his Can-Am cars in Goodwood, 1970. And Jack Brabham was coming from his shop. He was driving to Goodwood, and they said, "Okay, let's go for lunch." And they went to a fish and chips shop there. I know this shop. It's like a trolley, white painted. You can get fish and chips and can talk with the owner. And they say, "Okay, let's go fish and chips." Bruce came in his jacket, in his Goodyear jacket, to him. "Okay, go." Then the mechanic shouted, "Bruce, when are you back?" "Now we just go fish and chips." "Why?" And they said, "Now we just want that you make 2 or 3 laps, just to shake it down a little bit. We just want to see whether the fuel pump is working. Nothing special." But you can do it after fish and chips. And then Bruce said, "But when I do it now, then you go back to the workshop." He said, "Yes, when you drive now the 3 laps, we load the car and go back to the shop. Then Jack said, "Also, I can't drive this 3 bloody laps," and then we go. Bruce sit down in the race car, and on the second lap he was losing the engine hood. You know, the Can-Am car is not a toy. Man, is a 8-liter car which goes 300 miles an hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
He lost, and then the car spun, and then there was, from the Second World War, was just a little earth hill, but just a little one where they had the anti-flak, the anti-aeroplane guns mounted. He crashed against it and was dead. Must imagine. I mean, Bruce was, I was at that time, so I was 28, Bruce was 28, but I think he was 1 year older than me. And he was such a nice guy. Joe Siffert, such a nice guy. I was there at Brands Hatch when he was burned to death, because he was shouting out of the car before he died, because the car was upside down and they couldn't get it up. And unbelievable. Joe Schlesser, Jochen Rindt dead, Piers Courage dead in Holland. Yeah. His father was the famous Courage beer dynasty. You know, very wealthy. And when Piers was talking with his father that his mother was buying him a Mini Cooper and he wants to race, and the father said, "Well, stop that shit, because you are my follower in the Courage beer dynasty." No? And they said, no, he doesn't want. He doesn't want to have the company. He wants to be a race driver. And he said to his father, "Dad, you had the war, and I have racing." Can you imagine?
Yeah.
He burned to death in Holland for nothing. For nothing. It was terrible. Jochen was very close with him, and he told me at that moment he wanted to quit with racing at all, because he hated Colin Chapman. He hated him. They were not talking together. And then he got killed in Monza.
Yeah.
So this whole thing, looking back, well, at that time, what was very important for us in racing were the girls, of course. Yeah, really the girls, especially when we were racing in Sweden. You can imagine. But I was quite close to Ronnie Peterson. He got killed in Monza, very young. His wife, Barbara, they were together since I think they were 6 years old, Barbara and Ronnie. And after he got killed, she started drinking, died years later then on alcoholic. And
I suppose the safety standards have come an awful long way, haven't they?
Yeah, now racing is for me not really to understand the whole theater.
Yeah.
Because it's so computer and the racetracks are much safer as they were in my days. When I remember this World Champion race down in Mugello, you were driving with 200 miles an hour between apple trees. Passing by at the church, there was a priest standing and a man and a little dog. Close, you were flying past. Was unbelievable. Yeah.
So you think you lose something with all the computers and all the
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, the computer, I use it, of course, daily because I'm writing my books. But this is like a writing machine, like a typewriter.
Yeah.
And if it's difficult, I'm looking for some of my grandchildren, because even when they were 4 years old, they said, I can't Daddy, come on, I make it, and everything is okay. Now they are 14, 15 years, one is 24. I mean, they grow up with a computer. For me, it's still a little bit strange, the whole thing.
Oh, yeah. I use computers all the time, but I only use them when I have to. I'm not they have a purpose, but they shouldn't take over life.
For me, it's a typewriter, no? A typewriter with a correction system. I write the books and make the layout. Everything is fantastic. I mean, when I remember the typewriter with the copy paper in between, ridiculous, no? I mean, so is the computer fantastic, no? But that's the only thing I use it for.
Yeah. And just before I leave you, what do you think of Majesty Service as a film? Do you enjoy watching the film? Do you think it's a good film on the whole?
Oh yes. I'm also surprised. When the shooting was over with Le Mans, I wasn't looking at it. And because when I remember all the the things with the director and with Steve and so, I was fed up. No, the James Bond, but in those days, it was 1960. No? I mean, it was at that time it was a sensational film. I mean, nobody can imagine now how heavy those cameras were. They have to change the film. They have to, after every day, they had to fly the film roll to Paris in the lab. After 3 days, it was coming back. In the evening, we were looking at it, and the director said, "No, we have to do this again. We have to do that again. Here's the light wrong. We have to do this again." Then they had to film it again. It was the same in Le Mans. It's not even imaginable today.
Yeah.
And I mean, with all the electronic, and I mean, they're making films with a handy.
And nowadays, of course, you've got all the computer technology
the special effects. No?
Yeah,
this is all the computer technology. No?
There's something lovely about what you guys did back then. It's all for real. It's all it's and you can it's real. It feels different to.
I mean, you must. I mean, Le Mans was completely realistic speed. I mean, nowadays I cannot imagine how stupid I was. I was hitting the barrier with 195 miles an hour.
Wow.
Banging into another car, flat out. We were going Mulsanne straight down 395 kilometers an hour with the Ferrari, flat out. I remember, I was very close with Mike Haywood. And Mike was always looking a little bit at me, And I remember once I was going down at Unadier, where this flat-out right-hander is. We go there, throw with 360 kilometers an hour, and I was waving to Mike. And after we stopped, he said, "Erich, don't play with your life." Yeah, I see you're getting more and more lazy, and the first thing you will know how fast you are, because now you are getting used to the speed and you don't care. But if you have the slightest thing on the tire, losing a little bit of air, then you're in deep shit, believe me.
Yeah.
And he was right, because the more often you do it, the more used you get. Into the whole, and you don't see the danger. And as 27 years old, you are an idiot, unbelievable. Girls, big tits, French girls, they were from Dutch. There were twins coming. So I was going to the bed with two Dutch girls coming from Austria, a very conservative and Catholic country. I was in the deep swimming in the sin.
Well, why not?
What a lot of fun. And I meet still now Peter Samuelson. I met him 8 weeks ago. I was visiting my daughter in Palo Alto in California. And then I was going with my daughter down to Los Angeles, and I was meeting Peter Samuelson. He was the production manager. He was the assistant to Hubert Fröhlich.
Right.
And in 4 weeks, I'm flying again to Los Angeles. I will meet him again.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, he's still in the movie business. He's living in Hollywood and still doing films.
Yeah.
And he's original English.
Ah, right. Yeah.
His father was a famous director in England. Samuelson. Peter Samuelson.
Well, it sounds like you've had a rather wonderful and a blessed life, a lucky life as well, because obviously it's dangerous at times.
Yeah. I was lucky because I don't think that the time is so woolly and wild as they were in the 60s with Mick Jagger and the bands, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix. I mean, it was everything goes. The 60s were really everything goes.
Oh yeah, I think it was a unique time, and I think if everybody said if they could have a time machine, they'd probably want to go back to the 60s.
You're right. You're right. Because in 1970, then came the petrol crisis, then the whole stuff. And I think the 60s were a great time.
Yeah, I don't think there's been quite a decade like it, and I don't think there ever will be. I don't think. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for taking so much time to talk to me about your.
Yeah.
It's been really fun.
Okay. Have a nice time. Whenever you want something, just let me know. Okay.
Oh, that'd be lovely. I'll make sure to be in touch. Yeah.
Okay.
That's great.
Bye from Austria. Good Vienna. Cheers. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
How are you, mate? Yeah?
I'm very good. How are you?
How we doing? We're okay.
Good. That's perfect. So first of all, I just want to get some background, if I may. So I just wondered how you came into acting. What made you want to get into it?
Well, growing up, watching Flash Gordon, watching Johnny Weissmuller at Tarzan, I was always a very good swimmer.
Yeah.
And I like Western films, and I thought maybe I'd like to be a film actor.
Right.
I did my national service in the Army, joined the Merchant Navy.
Yeah.
Traveled around the world. I was at Butlin Redcoat for a couple of seasons.
Right.
63 and 64, met a couple of blokes that had done film extra work. And I said, well, I wouldn't mind being a film extra. So at the end of the season, in 1964, I approached the Film Artists Association in Marlows Road in London, and they took me on. And my first job was with Sean Connery, The Hill.
Right.
And then I got introduced to the casting director of The Saint, Gideon's Way, Billy Hurley, and they used me quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I worked on the Baron series, which I did some very good work on.
Oh yes, yeah.
And then I got my first equity ticket for A Million Years BC.
Right.
With Raquel Welch, Don Chaffee directing. And then I got into the Bond.
And how did the Bond come about?
Well, I had a very good agent at that time, and she used to put me in for everything, a lady called Gabby Howard.
Mm-hmm.
And then she phoned me and said, Terry, they're casting this new James Bond film. They're looking for supporting actors. And they like the look of you by photograph. I've arranged an interview with the casting director.
Yeah.
So I saw the casting director, and we got on pretty well. And I was asked to go to Pinewood Studios to meet Peter Hunt and to meet Harry Saltzman.
Yeah.
Which I did. And then I got lucky. They thought I was ideal for one of the supporting roles, Raphael.
Yes.
And then a couple of years later, I got asked to see Guy Hamilton, and they cast me in Diamonds Are Forever.
Oh, right. So it sort of just kept you in mind for the second one.
Right. That's right. And then, well, there we are. I've been working. I didn't do as well as I thought I might have done, but we're still around 50 years on.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I'll be 82 this year.
Oh, that's lovely.
So there we are. So we've been lucky with the James Bond people. We've got a couple of big events next year.
Yeah.
Have you seen the www on Her Majesty's Secret Service 50th.com?
Oh, yes. Is that the tour of sort of Switzerland and Portugal?
That's right. Yeah, that it should be a good one with Martin Mulder, the Dutch promoter.
Oh, right.
And Anders, the Swedish promoter. You know Anders from Sweden with Love?
Oh, yes, I do. Yeah, I've heard
they're in it together.
Yes.
So George and I and a few of the girls were hoping to be invited. If we're not invited to the first one, we certainly will be at Pitt's Gloria.
Oh, yes.
With Christopher Yeager.
Mm-hmm.
We've done a couple of events there, and they've been very successful. Yeah. So there we are, mate. So
yeah.
we've done. I was so lucky as an actor to get these parts in James Bond.
Oh, yeah. At the time, did you think they would you keep getting recognised for them, or was it just seem like a job?
People have been pulling my leg for over 50 years. I saw you on television. Didn't you do well? Can't you put me in? Didn't you look good?
Yeah.
And I said, well, there we are. That's when you're 32, you can do anything.
Yeah, that's right. You do. Yeah. So how was working on Bond, say, different to other productions? You sort of had a different feeling,
James
or?
Bond, as an actor, to be working on a James Bond film, you don't get any better than that.
No.
You get well looked after. You're a featured play on a James Bond film. And so lucky to have worked in a couple of Bond films.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So lucky.
Because your character Raphael, the research I've done.
Raphael in Honor Majesty, I do the opening fight scene, and I have 4 or 5 scenes after that.
Because my
stick up in the hotel.
Yeah.
The raid on Pitt's Gloria.
Mm-hmm.
And the wedding scene, which was quite good.
Yeah, that was done in Portugal, wasn't it? The wedding?
That was in
Portugal, yeah. Because my research suggests that originally it was just the beach sequence you were involved in that sort of snowballed? All the way through. Was that always intentional for you to be in the whole film?
No, the script was the whole film.
Oh, right, lovely.
All the scenes I was involved in.
Yeah. And
the stick up in the hotel, and then taking Bond back to Draco's office.
Yeah.
And getting beaten up by James again, and then we went to, there we are, it's all good stuff, it's all terrific stuff. I get a lot of people phoning me up and can I have a photograph, can I have an autograph?
Yeah.
Will you do that? But it's so flattering as well, Philip, it's not, so lucky.
Because what was it like working with George Lazenby?
Oh, super. We're good friends now. We're mates now.
Yeah.
50 years on, we are. And we've done a couple of memorabilia shows at Pinewood, and we've done a couple of shows at Pitt's
Oh yes.
Yeah, in Switzerland. And we get on very. There's only George and I left.
Yes, but not many, unfortunately, is there?
There's only George and I left, and a few of the girls, half a dozen of the Pitt's Gloria girls.
Yes.
And John Glenn, who was the second unit director.
Oh yes, because what was it like work with John Glenn? Did you do much of him?
But when he worked with us on the Majesties,
yeah,
he was the editor and the second unit director. Then he went on to do 5 James Bond films.
Yes.
But he's always at our events. He's always signing people's autographs and chatting along and questions and answers and stuff like that.
Oh, brilliant. What was it like working with Sean Connery?
Well, Sean was going through a divorce at that time.
Oh yes.
And he didn't want to do James Bond, but he was doing it financially for the Scottish Trust.
Yes.
So he kept himself very much to himself. But a very professional actor. You know, I mean, he did his best in Diamonds Are Forever.
Yes.
And I was so lucky to have worked with him.
Yes.
Doing the opening fight sequence. I was the guard that got the knives thrown into me.
Oh yeah, yes, I remember that bit. Yeah, remember that.
Sure. And that was a week's work, 1971.
Yeah.
And then they left Pinewood and went to America for 3 months.
Yes.
So we were very lucky working in Diamonds Are Forever.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And there was, but Sean was terrific. I mean, a very professional actor, and very lucky as well.
Yeah. Because obviously Sean was very, very much an established, you say, professional actor, but obviously...
Oh, yeah, tremendous in 007. I thought Dr. No from Russia, Goldfinger, the first 3 were terrific.
Oh yeah, they are.
And I think he should have resigned after that. I think he should have...
Yeah, they don't quite hit the same level, do they, the ones afterwards,
I thought the
unfortunately.
first 3 were great. I really did. But our film was good. I mean George Lazenby was good. Telly Savalas was good.
Yeah, he was.
Gabriele Fusetti, the locations were good. I thought it was a tremendous picture to work on. A pleasure to work on it. I consider myself so lucky to have played a part in it.
Yeah. Because you're saying that obviously Sean Connery was very professional, but obviously Lazenby was very much new to acting. Did that come off?
George was a character.
Yes.
You know, George was a showman. And I'm only sorry he didn't carry on.
Yes.
But, you know, things do happen in life, you know, you kick yourself after. But he's made a living, he's done what he wanted to do. But I'm only sorry, and I'm sure he is, that he didn't carry on playing 007.
Oh yeah, I think he... Obviously at the time you don't know... The benefit of hindsight, isn't it, sometimes? But
Well, that's what it is, yeah.
Because obviously did you work quite a bit with George Leach on the beach sequences?
George,
what was he
George,
like?
I've done a few things with George.
Yeah.
We got on very well, and his daughter is a very well-known stunt lady.
Oh yes, well Wendy, isn't it? Wendy Leach.
Wendy Leach,
yeah,
and she's married to Vic Armstrong.
Oh yes.
And then, you know, we meet up on these memorabilia shows. They were in Switzerland with me, and a couple of drinks and a glass of champagne, and like you do, and tell a few stories, and they were
Yeah. Because obviously you had George Leach being the stunt arranger. Was it very much guided by him, or did you have input in how to sort of do the action?
Well, you know, you can suggest certain things, and if the director likes what you're saying, and it works with everybody, fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I get an understanding that the beach sequence was originally supposed to be just on the sand, but then it got transferred to the water as well. Was that an easy thing to do it in the water as well on the beach?
Well, George did his own stunt work, and so did I. You know, we were both involved with the opening fight sequence.
Yes.
That took 5 days to do that.
Oh yeah, long time. I imagine it was quite cold. I imagine.
That was April.
Oh, April,
cold,
right? Yeah.
Very cold, but we did it. You know, I was 32. George was 29.
Yes.
And when you're that age, you can do anything.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So what was it? Because obviously you worked with 2 Bond directors, Peter Hunt and Guy Hamilton.
And Guy
How were they sort of to work with?
Well, they were the top of the tree, weren't they?
Yeah.
They were the top men in directing film.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, Guy Hamilton had a lot of background, and Peter was the editor of a lot of stuff.
Yes.
And he knew he was great. Peter Hunt was great to work with.
Yeah.
And well, I was the lucky one, Philip. I was the lucky one by getting into these films.
Well, it must have been very 32 as well to get into that age as well. It must have been quite something.
Well, 32 is a nice age to work in films and do all the action stuff. I'm so lucky, mate. So lucky.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously originally Majesty Service wasn't that successful, but now it's become obviously this huge classic.
It is now all over the world. People keep phoning me up, and people are on Facebook, and people a lot of following, a lot of fans out there like our film.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, were you originally surprised that there was a lot of negativity at the time?
No matter who took over from Sean Connery, they would have got slated.
Yes.
I thought George Lazenby was terrific.
Yeah.
I thought his presence, his character, his enthusiasm to work. I thought he was great. I really do.
Oh yeah. I think he did a brilliant job. So obviously you also worked on The Saint with Roger Moore.
Yeah, I did 5 scenes with Roger before Bond. Before Bond. I did character parts, guard parts, police parts.
Yeah.
And I did very well with Roger.
Because what was Roger like to work with?
Oh, super. Couldn't get a nicer bloke. He very funny and very appreciated, and he was quite a character. And I think that all the people that have played Bond, James Bond, he had a lot of enthusiasm for filmmaking.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's probably one of my favourites, just because I like the man as opposed to also the films as well.
Oh yeah, well I do like Roger. I like his films, but I did like Sean Connery. I like George, and I like this Daniel Craig as well. I think he's very good.
Yes, I think Daniel's very. So you quite like Bonds, even the modern ones. Quite happy to sort of watch them.
But as regards Pierce Brosnan, I didn't. I thought he was not all that. I didn't think he was right for the part.
Yeah.
I don't think he was tough enough. I don't.
No, he was a bit a bit more human. Perhaps he needed to be a bit tougher, possibly at times.
Maybe if you want to put it that way, but there we are, mate. So,
and lastly, I just want to ask you, because you did an episode of The Avengers as well. What was that like to work on The Avengers?
Oh, well, that was such a long time ago. We're going back about 50 odd years ago. I just did one of The Avengers.
Yeah.
And Patrick McNee, very professional. Diane Rigg, very professional. And the second unit director was a guy called Johnny Huff.
Yeah.
That went on to do some good stuff he did in America and yeah.
Brilliant.
Johnny Huff. I see him from time to time at different functions, but he must be in his 70s now. He must be. Yeah, Johnny Huff. He was the second unit director on The Avengers and The Saint. He's a good director.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for answering all those questions.
Okay, my friend. Well, thank you for phoning me, and thank you for being interested in my career, if you like, James Bond.
My pleasure.
Okay, mate. So I'll hear from you.
Yeah, you will do, and enjoy the snooker.
Well, I will. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Nice
Bye-bye.
Nice talking to you. Bye. So thank you very much, Jenny, for joining me to talk about the Majesty Service. It is very much appreciated. I wanted to ask you first of all how Well, why did you want to go into acting in the first place, and how did you begin that path?
It may seem as though there should be a simple answer, like I wanted to follow my parents. No, I did not want to be an actor. My brother was brilliant. He was gorgeous. He was 6'4" at 14. Later on, we went to an event and everybody thought that he was Michael Caine and took photos of him. I mean, he blonde, blue-eyed, wore glasses. I was very shy and I wasn't so much a wallflower as lichen. And I really trained as a nanny and a governess. And I was going to go to America and look after children in America because they seemed to have two families. It didn't occur to me that divorce came into the question, but they seemed to have some older children who I thought as a governess I could teach, and younger children who as a nanny I could look after. And that's what I trained to do, did child psychology, everything. And then my mother's divorce happened and we needed me to work here. So my mother paid for me to do a modeling course because she heard somebody say how sad it was that such a beautiful woman had such a plain daughter. So she sent me to this modeling course, and I was first of all used as a trainer to teach young girls how to be photographic models, because at about the age of 2, after the war, I was the bonny child who advertised the free orange juice that the government gave every child. You just went to the post office and picked up a bottle and I advertised it. So I knew a bit about photography. And then I just sort of slipped into modeling. And from that, was offered commercials and then television jobs and drama and comedy and then film. It happened.
In terms of the BOGNER film finding you, was it kind of just sort of did you have an agent that put you forward for it, or how did the BOGNER film come about?
The Bond film, you're going to have to talk a bit louder.
Oh,
Sorry,
yes.
I don't know what's going on, but I can't quite hear you. The Bond film, I had done a lot of acting, and I'd done a commercial in the cinemas for an ice cream, which Harry Saltzman's, I don't know, agent, well, no, he was sort of a scout who looked for talent. And he put my name forward to Harry Saltzman. I went to see Harry Saltzman and I was offered a film contract or a contract with Harry, which after discussions, we cut down to 6 years with training time at the beginning. And all of a sudden he rang me up and he said, we've got problems. I've got this film starting and one of the girls has dropped out and I want you to go and spend, it may be up to 6 weeks in Switzerland. Shame. And he said, the only other trouble is we've got too many blondes. So you can't be a blonde. So I said, well, I've never dyed my hair. I won't dye my hair, but because of modeling, I've got some wigs. And he said, okay, you can be the Irish girl and we'll have that long red wig. And off I went to Switzerland just to fill up the numbers. That was all. And had a hugely wonderful time.
I assume there was quite a bit of time off in between the shoots.
Well, yeah, as you know, every actor is not used in every scene, not even if you're Mr. Bond. So yes, there's a lot of time off. We were 12 girls, remember, up on that mountain. We had, I think it was 3 Olympic ski teams up there as well. And we all stayed in this village, which was 2 cable cars up the mountain. And then another cable car up was a little cafe area where we did our wigs our clothes and our makeup, and then yet another cable car up. And they'd built this extraordinary turning, I don't know, what became a restaurant and a helicopter pad. And it was just extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. It was tedious for us because as the girls, we were meant to be, terribly sweet and look after ourselves. So there was certainly no skiing, no tobogganing, no skating, not even a snowball fight. But it was a bit posh. In the mornings, we'd be picked up from our hotel and we'd sit in this horse-drawn sleigh and we'd be covered in furs and we'd be taken to the cable car. And, well, we just sort of were there.
I went to the 50th anniversary event a few years ago, and it's not really changed, has it? Apart from a little bit of development here and there on the Piz Gloria, it's just like as it was. Is it strange going back to those places all these years on?
I didn't know you were there. Hello.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you go to the event where they opened the James Bond exhibition with the video games and the everything else? Or did you go when we started doing the handprints and the everything else?
I think I went. There was the handprints, and it was the big one that on the tracks that 007 did for the 50th anniversary of the film. That's the one I went to. Yeah,
because they calmed it down a bit when we arrived, because the first time, which was the 50th anniversary, we came in, 3 Bond girls and George, James Bond, came in a helicopter, and all these people were on that extraordinary mass, which at one time we turned into an whole ice rink. And as the helicopter came in, they strafed all the people, but just noise. And it was, and all these people went like that. And it was just huge fun. And then, of course, we zoomed around and the next helicopter came around. When you were there, we were slightly more polite. We landed politely and we got out and we did the handprints and the everything. But I think everybody just celebrated the fact it made Mürren. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful village, but it's now, as you say, much bigger, many more hotels, and not as innocent as it was. But then after 50 or so years, it can't be. And after 3 Olympic ski teams, it can't be.
No. So do you remember working with director Peter Hunt on the film? Do you have
Absolutely, a gentle gentleman. Yes. I sort of felt that Peter was better with the emotions rather than the explosions. He was a people person rather than a machine person. And I think that's why he brought out, because you really need to read the book. It's one of the very best James Bond books. And reading it, you get emotional and cry at the end. And I think George did so well with the end of the film. And I think that is down to Peter Hunt, because Peter has such a big heart, and it showed.
Do you remember your fellow Bond girls? You must have got to know them quite well, some of them.
I knew some of them very well before, because we met up modelling. Joanna Lumley was a great mate, and we lived quite close to each other. So we'd visit each other's homes anyway. And she had a baby son, and we'd visit there as well. Anushka Hempel I knew, again, through acting, through television, through modelling. Who else did I know? We all got on very well, because there was no animosity. There was no, I want a line better than your line. And we were stuck up a mountain. So if you were going to get cross, where could you go to be pouty? You couldn't. We started off like everybody does on film sets, really, on location. playing or poker. And poker is a dangerous game. You never, ever, ever on a film set play for money. You always find something, be it pebbles, be it what we had, which first of all was toothpicks, which we ran out of. And then it was biscuits, which we ran out of. And well, everything we ran out of. And eventually, Joanna Lumley took the helm and taught everybody how to crochet, even the stuntmen.
And the couple of other ladies I want to mention. Did you, Angela Scholar? Did you mention?
Angela Schooler.
Schooler, yes.
I hadn't met her before. No. She was one of the most confident girls, of course, because she had the best part, and she'd done a lot as an actress. But she didn't really have great friends there. She had her own thing to do. I didn't get to know her very well.
And there was Julie Edge, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Julie Edge, the most beautiful girl. She had the most annoying thing because she had this gorgeous smile, open face, and her eyes didn't close or go up like most of us. When I smile or grin, and I mean, Joe was saying this as well, when we smile, our faces, all sort of scrunch. Julie Edge, no, she was fabulous. I did a publicity thing down at Southern Television with Julie, and we arrived in a helicopter we had a very busy day, actually, being opening some children's wards and going to a restaurant or something, and then ending up at the television studios and doing a whole interview and thing. And as the helicopter landed, there were some sailors doing maneuvers sort of with I suppose you could call it a cannon, really. And they were all in chunky white jackets or jumpers and dashing about the place. We landed, we were being greeted by these very polite, nice local bigwigs, and all of a sudden we were kidnapped. And these guys grabbed Julie and me. Sadly, I was wearing a very short black skirt, which I wish I'd worn trousers. And we were sort of hefted over people's heads and over their shoulders and carried away. Another group of soldiers, I think in this case, came to say we were meant to give them the introduction and the grand welcoming party. So the soldiers and the sailors were sort of annoyed. Somehow, Julie and I were given weapons, rifles and things to hold. The whole thing was chaos, huge fun, and everybody was friendly, but the photographs are hilarious.
You did quite a few publicity shots during your time there, didn't you, for the film?
Yes, I got into trouble, actually, because one time I did some photos with George Lazenby, and I had my blonde hair, and I got told off because I was not meant to be photographed, except wearing my red wig. So it was, you didn't know when you were going to be photographed, to be truthful. People would come up there. We had a Playboy magazine who wanted us to do the 12 months, the calendar, the 12 months of the 12 Bond girls. I won't say who, but I think it was about 3 of us said no, which meant that the other girls couldn't raise that immense amount of money that they were going to throw at us. But there was no way that 3 of us were going to do Playboy calendar. It was a good idea, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's something that people would have liked to have done, and they get older, they think, well, maybe I should have done, I don't know, but it's, whether it was, because there was, of course, a very much of a sort of a physicality to Bond girls, isn't it? There's this glamorous side of it, and sort of, did you always feel comfortable with that kind of part of it? Yeah.
That didn't bother me because I'd already put in my contract with Harry Saltzman that I would do no nude or semi-nude photographs or filming. And it was something that I stuck to.
Yeah.
And now that I'm the mother of 2 sons and I'm the grandmother of 4 little people, I'm very glad I did stick to it. I wonder what other people who did sort of discard their clothes like autumn leaves feel when their family look at them. But I know, and my sons knew at school, that I never did. So when nasty people would go to them and say, oh, I've found a topless picture of your mum, they were able to turn around and say, with total confidence. So when I did a film later on, which was called The Flesh and Blood Show, which is a really classy title, and the director put in a topless shot and a bottomless shot, Equity were on my side and demanded that they were taken out because the girl was, definitely not a natural blonde. So they accused the director of defamation of character because I am a natural blonde. So he took out the bottom half, but the top half stayed.
Yeah. Did you encounter Taste of Alice at all?
Telly was a very spiritual man. He sometimes would go deeply into his Greek background and talk about the gods and the romance, really, of Greece. And he was very much a believer in, if you had a record playing and he had a little sort of villa rather than staying in a hotel, and if he was playing a record, when he left the room or was called to set, he wouldn't stop the record. He would leave it playing until it stopped of his own accord, because he felt that it was unfair to the spirits.
Oh, that's very nice. Yes.
Yeah.
And I must mention George Lazenby, of course. His first film, a lot of pressure on his shoulders, but it seems like from what you kind of alluding to, that he handled it quite well.
I think he did very well. I'd worked with him as a model before, so I sort of knew him. But he was guided incorrectly, I think. He was told, be Bond. So he'd go into one of the few restaurants up on our mountain and demand a table. And he'd be told, well, I'm sorry, but, there isn't one ready for you for about an hour. And he'd do the almost, do you know who I am? Because he was guided incorrectly. And he had to be Bond, which I can understand what they meant and how they were trying to help him, but it didn't help. It didn't help. You can't. I mean, even Stanislavski gave you time off to be yourself and not just your character. But George, unfortunately, got the wrong side of You Are Bond, and it even carried on through to the premiere, where he was asked to cut his hair, get rid of his beard and moustache, and look like Bond. And he thought he was beyond that. He had a beautiful place to live, which Albert Broccoli and Harry Saltzman had arranged, and he was on top of everything because he was Bond. He'd get on his motorbike, which of course the insurance company would go mad about. And he turned up at the premiere with beard, with long hair, and basically he was told, either behave yourself or out. And his agent, one is led to believe, said, well, the Bond franchise hasn't got long to live, so don't worry about it. And he lost Bond. But I think he was very, very good. And he certainly looked good.
Oh yeah. I think you think of Daniel Craig when he went to the premiere for No Time to Die. He was wearing a pink jacket, a pink tuxedo jacket, and so you're the victim of the time you live in a little bit, aren't you? Whereas no one would have batted an eyelid now if George had gone with a beard and long hair and.
No, but remember that we used to wear gloves at dinner parties, and we used to dress to go to the cinema and the theatre. Very different times. I mean, it is nearly 60 years ago. Let's be fair.
Well, yes, yeah.
So you were expected, like all Hollywood superstars, to be the superstar, not to be a hippie, which is what George wanted to be.
And well, the hippie craze was kind of full swing, wasn't it? So about that time, well, to be fair. Of
course, it was the swinging 60s.
Yeah. And you can see why people didn't think maybe Bond, in light of things like Easy Rider, would go on to still be around, of course. So
but they forgot about humor. I think the marvelous thing about Bond are the one-liners, are the looks, the humor that's in there, that is in the books. So it's not just filmic, and it saves the whole thing. And Sean Connery did it so beautifully, but being tough. And I think George did it beautifully. I think I'd like to have seen a second Bond with George.
Yeah, I got a sense that he was very young when he did the film, and whether if he had done more, the relationships would have got better with the producers and he would have settled in. Probably very likely. But it would have taken 2 or 3 probably for him to kind of sort of settle into it.
Well, yeah, I mean, excuse me, I'm getting over the lurgy. The stuntmen didn't take to him very kindly, mainly because he didn't know what to do. He hasn't trained. He hadn't been to acting school, so he didn't know about fight management. And he had a hard time. The stuntmen put him through a hard time. And I think that would have eased, definitely, as the time went on. But it didn't happen.
Did you get a sense that he was quite relaxed on set, or was it kind of?
Oh, yes.
He was, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, over the last few years, I've had trouble with George, because he does this sort of macho thing of, I had everybody up there, and I could bet a bird that just look at her and things. And I finally said, in front of the press that were there, and I said, George, do you realize that you're actually ruining my reputation and everybody else's reputation by your boasting, which is untrue? He hadn't thought about that. He was being the big man on campus.
Yeah.
And hadn't sort of got through to him that there are 2 people that he's talking about. But, excuse me, I think he's learning. Mind you, he did get thrown off a series, a tour recently in Australia.
Yes, I did hear about that. And also I think he was I saw when we were at the 50th, he was you could tell his wild side is still there, if you know what I mean. He didn't do anything that was inappropriate, but just a few things that you think, oh, well, and this is why I'm not sure whether or not it would have been good for him to stay with the franchise, because if that wild side is still there at the age of 80, could it have caused some fractures with the series, perhaps? I don't know.
I think truly he'd have grown up.
Yes, it might have been.
Because, I mean, Diana Rigg never answered back. He made hideous comments about her. And we're talking about a Shakespearean-trained, admirable actor, and a young man who's feeling his power, shall we say, or thinking he has all the power in the world. Diana Rigg could have squashed him, but she didn't. She didn't.
Yeah.
It's just part of his bravado.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think, as you say, Johanna, because of her background, had a level of professionalism that she could bring to it, so she would, would have dealt with those situations. And I think for your first film to be a Bond film and to be so young, and you know, it's I don't really think it could have really gone any other way for most people. I think it would have really gone to your head,
Yeah.
and women falling over in front of him and all that, must have been terrible for him. But it that must inflate your ego a little bit, and I can
It was
understand why.
difficult from everybody's point of view, from
Mm,
everybody's point of view. But as I said in the beginning, he was led wrong. He
yes,
was
yeah,
told, be Bond,
yeah,
be, the big I am. And
mm,
unfortunately, he overplayed it
mm,
and basically still does.
yeah. Well, I suppose when he goes to events, people expect he probably thinks that people expect him perhaps to be a certain way, or
No,
perhaps
it's
I don't
George.
know.
It's George.
He's
He's
just George. Yeah,
he likes boasting that he can lay anything he wants,
yeah,
and I use that in the biblical sense. um, and he he just doesn't think. Bless
yeah,
him.
mm,
That's the problem. He doesn't think,
yeah.
and it's only because I know him and I've met him over and over again as well that I treat him like my naughty cousin.
That's a good.
And the thing is, as I've said to him, it's other people's reputation that you're playing with.
Mm,
You
yeah,
may think you're the big man, but you're making other people feel uncomfortable.
mm,
And
yeah.
it just doesn't get through. It doesn't get through.
No, well, we'll still try. Um,
It's a different world. That's the trouble. The world has changed
mm.
hugely. And I don't think George has changed quite as much.
Yeah, there's something nice about that, but also troubling, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
do you think the film, just you say the world changed a lot? Do you think the film still holds up as well as it did back in '69?
Yes, I do. I think it holds up not only because of the way the story was written, which, as I say, is one of my favorite James Bond books, but the skiing, the the extraordinary gymnastics that were done, the filming that was done, there were wonderful things that were done which are so Bond. Um, there was one scene up on the top of our mountain and there wasn't enough snow. So they sent a helicopter to a different mountain with something hanging underneath, filled that with snow, and brought it to our mountain. Now, that doesn't happen often.
No.
Bring snow, okay. And they bring snow. But the skiing was extraordinary. The special effects were extraordinary. The stuntmen were extraordinary. Most of them, people that one knew from studios in England, taken over, the best of the best. But then the scenery was extraordinary, both in Portugal as well as Switzerland and everywhere. But also, I do think that the emotion was brought out, and it was beautifully done.
Mm. And not forgetting, of course, John Barry's wonderful score to the film, and of
Oh,
course the song as well. So
yes, we have all the time in the world.
yeah,
Ironic,
yeah,
ironic.
yeah. I heard it so many times on that trip that I haven't really been able to listen to it properly since without getting a little bit nauseous. That as lovely as it is.
I played it the other day on my Boom Radio program, and you're right. It does something
Mm,
inside you.
yes,
It's extraordinary.
yeah. And you mentioned Harry Saltzman had you into a long-term contract. Did he release you from your contract at a certain point, or how did
Well,
that go?
that was again down to um, the fact that I wouldn't take my clothes off.
Ah,
He
right.
wanted me to do a film, and there was a nude scene in it, and I said, I'm awfully sorry, but look at my contract.
Yeah.
And he was lovely to me. He was the most charming gentleman. Well, apart from the first time I met him, I went into his office and he was on this dais behind this big, dark brown desk. And I was down one step on this extraordinary leather sofa. And the leather sofa was such that if you sat back, your feet stuck straight out because it was so wide. It came behind your knees. Or if you sat forward, you were sort of perched. And that was a sort of uncomfortable meeting, but that was my first meeting. But no, I wouldn't do the film he wanted me to do. And then trying to remember what his name was. Wait a minute. I was invited to do, excuse me, a film. Who was the director who did I'm looking through my notes here because I don't remember names anymore. That's the terrible thing. And I can't remember his name. I did The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes for him. And Billy Wilder got there. Billy Wilder. And he asked me to do The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, to be the girl that Sherlock Holmes, as a student, fell in love with and who broke his heart, which is why he never went with another woman again. And I thought, wow, Billy Wilder, how incredible. And bless him, Harry Saltzman thought, I can't, argue with Billy Wilder because that's big noise. So with an agreement, he let me out of my contract and I was able to go and do whatever I wanted to do. So my television career then carried on rather than films, because it was a time when big names were taking their clothes off. You couldn't go to an interview for a film and they say, well, there is this topless scene. And you say, well, I'm sorry, but I don't do that. And they say, well, who the hell do you think you are? Glenda Jackson does it. And they give you all sorts of names. And you think, well, I know I'm not as good an actress as they are, but I have my morals. So it was a very difficult time, the end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s. Very.
I think people have different comfort zones, don't they, as well? It's not necessarily, obviously, morality comes into it as well, but people, some people just comfortable with something, some people aren't. It's just respecting that, isn't it, really?
Totally.
Well, what was Billy Wilder like as a director?
He was lovely. He came as a team, Billy Wilder and his sort of co-author. And they knew what they wanted. They spent a fortune trying to get it. The film, Izzy Diamond was his partner, and they wrote wonderful scripts, wonderful lines. And the film turned out to be about 4 hours long when edited.
Yeah.
So an awful lot had to be cut out. And my whole story of Sherlock Holmes at university was cut out. But I didn't find that out till I'd been to America as Billy Wilder's new Juve lead. And I did all the chat shows and all the interviews, and I did New York for a week and then Los Angeles for 10 days. Then I was invited back to New York to do some more television late night interviews and things like that. And then exhausted, got back to England and found I wasn't in the film anyway. But that happens in show business.
Are the scenes presumed lost, I take it? Or
I don't know. I haven't seen them. But the amount that they spent on the costumes, just for me, let alone anybody else, frightening. Oh, and I had to have an 18-inch waist. My waist was 21, so it wasn't too bad. but it meant that I had to sleep in a corset and then loosened and then tighten it during the day. And I had this lovely man he said he was a fisherman or had been a fisherman, and he had fingers like leather, and he would pull this, this corset in the mornings and sort of squeeze my ribs together. And it was liquid lunch, liquid all the way through the day. And then in the evening, scoff everything, have a bath. And then unfortunately, the thing went back on, but it did look sensational.
Hmm. Was there anything from the Bond film that was cut of yours that you recall? Any? Do you have any? You obviously don't have a speaking part in the film, but
well, I mean, I had some lines somewhere, and I practiced my Irish accent, even though in some places I'm called an Italian girl. I practiced my Irish accent. Catherine Schell, who I also did know before, and we lived close by as well. Catherine Schell somehow got my potatoes, which, because remember the girls were all allergic to some food or other. And of course, being the Irish girl, it was meant to be potatoes.
Yes.
For some reason, Catherine Schell got my potatoes and I got sweet corn, which I've never understood to this moment. But anyway, that was one of the strange things that happened.
Well, I suppose at least it's less stereotypical. So I suppose it worked out perhaps for the best on that one. But
no, because I was meant to go back to Ireland and poison the potato farms.
Yeah.
See my point?
Yeah, so just like something's went wrong on the day.
Poison the sweet corn rows.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. Yeah. I mean, it was so small in the scheme of the story that it didn't really matter. But
it could have been worse because Sylvana had bananas, of course, and that was
typical.
Yeah.
That was typical. We are talking about, as I say, nearly 60 years ago.
Yes, yeah. And, did you like working with Sylvana?
Oh, Sylvana is an absolute hoot. Sylvana actually saved me that time when you were on the top of the mountain, when it was the 50th or was
that was the 50th, yeah.
That was the 50th. And my suitcase got lost. So I either was going to borrow the clothes of my 6'4" son, who came with me, or wear what I had been wearing to travel for the rest of the time that we were up the mountain. And Sylvana, bless her, said, look, come to my room. I've got some tops. I've got some jackets. And she lent me a beautiful yellow blazer, which looked fabulous. Bless her. No, we're great mates. She had a son up there as well. So the two of them misbehaved wonderfully. I mean, they were in their 20s, but...
Yeah. I mentioned Cubby Broccoli. Did you meet Albert Broccoli? Cubby Broccoli? Was he around?
Oh, Cubby was a teddy bear, absolute teddy bear, and such a family man. He had his family in Switzerland for a lot of the time, actually, and we were invited to his son's first haircut, which apparently was a very important thing. And it was, I mean, he was a hug on legs, basically. Harry Saltzman was more acidic, more businesslike, whereas Cubby was the one who, if anything went wrong, he'd make sure that everybody felt all right by the end of it.
Yeah.
They were a good team, really good team.
Yeah, it seemed like they each had different skills and they complemented each other quite nicely.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't want to let you go without mentioning the Persuaders, one of my favourite TV series. Do you remember much about those couple of days on way back when?
Roger Moore was a great friend of my mother's, and I have to admit it's my grandparents who took the photographs of Roger for knitting patterns. I am awfully sorry. But my mother used to drive him up to London when they were both going for interviews for jobs and things. And I found a lovely photograph going through my grandparents, one of their catalogues. I mean, they were very successful photographers and royal photographers, in fact, by appointment to the Queen Mother and to the Queen. And they were the ones who started the relaxed photographs of the of the royal family. And I found a photograph of a rather sort of extended blonde young man lying on a beach in not so much budgie smugglers as canary smugglers. And it turned out to be Roger Moore. So I cut it out of the album and sent it to Roger in Switzerland. And he said, if you've got any more, my wife's very interested. But he was an absolute sweetheart. And whenever I met him, we had hugs and chats. And it was a very strange sort of episode in that my character, we weren't quite sure whether she had an affair with Roger Moore's character or whether she was hoping to, or, you know, it was one of those sort of things. But she walked in the door and was going to kiss Roger Moore's character. And only when I watched it back did I see Tony Curtis come behind me and sniff me, which was a very strange thing to do.
Yes.
But a nice sort of, I don't know, thing.
Yeah. Did you get to spend any time with Tony Curtis? Do you remember what he was like?
He could be quite naughty. He had a dressing room that he'd had a steam room put in. And, well, you know what you look like after you come out of a steam room.
Yes.
And he'd be halfway through a scene and he'd go to his dressing room because he wasn't needed for the next few takes. And he'd come back, hair wet, face bright red, sweaty. And of course, you know, everybody would have to stop for half an hour. But he was, I mean, he'd been going for so long and he just had a wicked sense of humour.
Yeah. He always wore gloves. He had, you know, was quite a quirky sort of person by all accounts, but the chemistry and the performance, I think, was worth any difficulties.
I think it worked beautifully. But then Sir Roger had such a wonderful sense of humour that he wouldn't mind if somebody misbehaved in front of him or tried to upstage him or whatever. Sir Roger didn't have to. He just was.
Yeah. So they got. Sorry.
I may be biased, I said.
So they got on quite well, although they were a bit chalk and cheese. They were fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yes, definitely.
You did have a brief scene in the episode with the female guest star Penelope Horner. Do you remember her at all?
I don't really. It was so far as I can remember, I was ironing or something.
Yes.
No, I don't really remember her. Why?
I was just wondering because she's still around, but I did an event for that your episode of Swayers actually with the director Peter Medic, and he is still in contact with Penelope, but she's not in the best of health. So it's always interesting to. I
have to say that growing up is not for sissies.
No, I don't think it is. No.
Recently I had an op on my back, which was 9 sort of all-in-one stitches. Then I slipped in the bathroom and I had 16 stitches in my head. Then I had to have my back operated on again and I had 18 stitches. And then I got this cold thing, which has made my voice interesting, I think is the word I want. But I still do my radio program and everybody thinks, who is that person? But no, we carry on. We carry on.
I remember first time I met you was at an event at Pyman Studios. I think it was 2011, I want to say, and they had a James Bond Mastermind competition. Came up to the big chair and I won it. I was and you gave me the little goodie bag and things. I always remember that.
Brilliant. Was that when Gareth did the I'm a Stuntman with the glass bottle?
Oh, I think that was a few years after. I think that was with Paul Weston, wasn't it? Yeah, I think that was 4 or 5 years ago. This was I think Shane Rimmer and people like that were the one that they did the mastermind.
They
so this was
do good events at Pirates.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm at the moment trying to sort out how to get down to Brighton for the end of the London to Brighton vintage car rally, because of course Genevieve is 70 years old this year.
Oh right, yeah.
And my mother, Dinah Sheridan, was one of the 4 in Genevieve. And Genevieve, the car, and the other car, the Spiker, are at the moment down at the Motor Museum in Bewley until next month is the London to Brighton rally.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to sort of get to see Genevieve. So I don't know how to do that, but I'm getting there.
Oh yeah, sounds like it'd be quite something. I hope you get to do that. But so it was. I think that was 14 years ago that we first met, and annoyingly, you don't look any different.
Thank you for that, but I'd check with your oculist.
well, I know I've expanded quite a bit, but I think Bond girls always have very good genes. I've always sort of. When I met Honor Blackman, they always
Caroline Munro and yes, Maddie Smith. Yeah. Makes you spit. And
it does a little bit, yeah.
Joanna Lumley, bless her.
Yeah. Did you remember the director of The Persuaders, Peter Medic? Did you? No.
No.
Because you would have been on there a couple of days. In all fairness, so.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and it was one of those typical British television series where you're booked for the job, you get the script about 2 days before. Would you bring your own clothes and jewelry and shoes and everything else? And you sort of get in there, do it, get off.
Yeah.
There's none of that. We're just going to break now because we're going to have a coffee or something like they do in America. Nah. Get in, get on, get off.
Not as glamorous as we audience members think it is.
No.
Yeah. And finally, Jenny, do you have a favourite project in your career other than those that we have discussed?
A favourite?
A favourite project you've worked on. So something that you're most proud of.
Oh, always Magpie. Always.
Yeah.
The good that Magpie did with the help of our audience, not just the yearly charity fundraising things, but all the way through. The people who organised Magpie, I know that it was a copy of Blue Peter, but I think it became more friendly. Blue Peter was slightly classy, and I don't mean standoffish, but they asked, for instance, for the charities, they asked for things that needed to be collected, that needed to be washed, that needed to be sorted, whatever. We were given, and we had the temerity to ask for money. Yeah. And it went straight into a bank, and it made more money as we were collecting the money. And people would come in and just give us, their 10 pence or 10 shillings pocket money. And it was wonderful when we went out to dinner, just as ourselves, not as part of Magpie. People would come up and give us money. The trust was extraordinary and something that you won't get, I don't think, anywhere else. And we didn't have an advertising break. We were a half-hour program that didn't flog stuff to children.
Well, I think the worst thing about Blue Peter was that it made parents have to build Thunderbird Tracy Island. The hours of misery.
We did that too.
You did a bit of that, but
if we did that, for instance, if we did a bird table, we didn't expect you to have a garden to build a bird table. We did a bird table that you could fit onto your window ledge on the 16th floor of a block of flats. And we made sure that we knew that everybody lived in different circumstances. And we loved it. We loved it. And we loved the way the audience was very much part of it. I mean, we got to 10,000 viewers per program, which is extraordinary.
Yeah.
What do I mean, 10,000?
Oh, 10 million, you mean?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, these days, 10,000 is pretty good, but, you know.
Well, yeah, no.
Competition, but yeah, in those days, yeah.
And I'm still friends with Mick, who looks just the same, except his hair is just as long and just as curly, but shot with grey. And Douglas Ray, who, I mean, I went to see The Great Escaper the other day.
Oh, yeah.
And that is ACOS Films, and that's Douglas Ray as one of the producers. So, I mean, we're still around. We're still doing our bit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Were you with the show until its demise, or did you leave us? Yeah.
Susan Stranks did about 6 years, and I did just over 6 years. And they took it off because there was a new director of children's programs, and Magpie was twice a week, all over the country, every single ITV station, and he wanted that airtime with his name attached to it, I think. Right. And so Magpie came off. He put another sort of children's magazine program on, which didn't take at all. And then the stations fractioned. There was nothing that was twice a week like Magpie. And Magpie and Blue Peter needed each other.
Yeah.
Because Blue Peter was Monday, Magpie was Tuesday. Blue Peter was Friday, but had to change to Thursday because we were getting the better audience. And we were Friday. So there were 4 days a week that we had those children's magazine programs.
Yeah.
And because we all wanted the best stories and the best people, we were using our imagination, our brains, our intellect and luck to try and get the best people from them before they did. So we egged each other on, which was wonderful.
Do you have a favorite moment from that time, a favorite thing that you did, or?
Oh, so many. I will never jump out of an aeroplane again. Thank you. I will never wash an elephant again. Thank you. Although the trunk going down your Wellington boot is very warm. I will never do the underwater helicopter escape training again. I am very proud of the Endangered Species series that we did, which even now, carries on and continues with the European bison being bred in captivity and then released into where they should be. Shvalsky wild horses being bred in captivity and released back on the Russian plains. All these things are being done that a little children's program helped to just bring into people's consciousness.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm very proud of Magpie.
Yeah. There doesn't need to be that many shows, unfortunately, these days that have that kind of sort of social responsibility and
exactly conscience.
Yeah.
It's difficult, and of course the problem nowadays is you need to make money and you need to make it quickly, because I mean, I'm talking about a time when there were only 3 television stations, or channels, should I say. So it's so different now. I don't know that I'd like to start again now. I don't know that I'd like to be 18, 20 now.
Yeah.
Although it's exciting, but no, I'm tired now. I'm 76 years old. Enough.
Well, I did talk to particularly a lot of technicians, and they got a job by pretty much knocking on the gate of the studios, and now you've got 6 years at film school just to make the tea, and it's really tough.
Well, and they don't bring the tea trolley round anymore.
But yeah, not even tea trolley. So yeah.
No, not allowed it.
Was there any challenge that you didn't want to do? But you were always quite fearless when it came to these sort of things you're doing on Magpie.
We didn't have to do anything. We had a unit meeting where everybody got together on Wednesdays, and we had about 5 researchers, brilliant people, who would come up with ideas. And if a researcher said to me, well, I want you to do this, and I wasn't terribly keen, then Mick would say, well, I'll do it. I rather like that idea. Or you would say, well, yeah, I'll do that. Unfortunately, they very seldom insured us, we found out later.
Right.
Because it was children's television, and we got children's television wages as well. So we certainly didn't get enough money to pay for my tooth that had to be shored up after the parachute jump. But it was part of it. It was really rather gung-ho, which made it, in a way, even more fun.
How did you damage your tooth, if you don't mind me asking? Was it
parachute jump?
Yeah.
I was with the red arrows. Sorry, they go a bit fast to get out of the aeroplane. Red Devils.
Devils, yes. Yeah.
And they put a tape recorder on my chest, and you're in the jumpsuit, and the parachute harness goes. I mean, as a female, I've got lumpy bits, so it goes underneath the breast, and the tape recorder was here. And unfortunately, when the parachute opens, those bits go above the breast. So now you've got a lot of material with a tape recorder. So as you land and roll, the tape recorder comes up and hits you in the mouth.
Oh.
They didn't think about that because none of the Red Devils were female.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah. You mentioned the Great Escaper. That just reminds me, Michael Caine was in a contract with Harry Saltzman because of the Harry Palmer series, and when Michael was getting very, very popular, Harry released him and said, just like you, realised that it was better. You didn't want to ever restrict people's opportunities. It seemed like, so he just wanted what was best for Michael and yourself. So I thought there's a
Harry
theme.
Saltzman was lovely. Michael and I, Harry Saltzman wanted to start what used to be called the rank. The rank organization had their own stable of actors and actresses, and Harry Saltzman wanted to start his stable of actors and actresses. Rank Charm School, that's what they were called. And when he started, he had 2 blonde Brits. One was Michael Caine, who did really rather well, and one was Jenny Hanley, who backed out because she didn't want to do the films. We both had the same agent, who was lovely. And Harry Saltzman, as I said to you, was a gentleman. And he couldn't afford to do all the films that Michael Caine should, would, could, and did do.
Yeah.
So I was a cheap escape because I said, I'm sorry, I can't do them. So he let me off. But he let me out of my contract into another contract, which is what he also did to Michael Caine.
Yeah.
So he's a good guy.
Very few of them around, and unfortunately, really, sort of, but
yeah.
So I take it, you say you might not perhaps go into the industry now, but if you could start over again, but I assume you don't regret a day of your career, and you're very satisfied with what you did.
No, I don't. No, there's nothing I regret at all. There's quite a lot I wish I'd done better, but no, nothing. I had the most wonderful, when I went to America to publicize the private life of Sherlock Holmes, I was taken by my PR guy to one of the big film studios for an interview. And as we were going back to our car, a huge busload of tourists and fans came out, took one look at me and said, Faye Dunaway. And I kept saying, no, I'm not, I'm Jenny Hanley. And they complimented me on my accent, demanded autographs. My helper, or actually he was my bodyguard, and he said, just sign. Sadly, or correctly, I misspelt both names, which meant I wasn't impersonating her. But a bit later on, when I got back to England, I went to an interview for a commercial, and I went up some rather bad-looking stairs in Chelsea and went into this room, and there was this fat, chubby guy, sort of slobby behind a desk, and he told me to sit down with this rather questionable American accent. And he said, who are you? He said, wait a minute, I've forgotten his name, I can't bear it. Come along, Jenny. What is his name? Who did War of the Worlds?
Orson Welles?
Yes.
Yeah.
He said, come on in, sit down, bad American accent. He said, I'm Orson Welles, who are you? And I said, I'm Faye Dunaway. I thought, I've done this before, I'll do it again if he's going to be silly, play games. This is meant to be an interview. Anyway, we had a nice chat. And he said that, I could leave by a different door. And as I went out of this door, there was this baronial staircase with these huge pictures of Orson Welles in all his most famous parts in films. And I thought that actually was Orson Welles. And I've now told him I'm Faye Dunaway. This is not a good thing. That I wish I hadn't done. But he remembered, and I didn't get that commercial. But he gave me a part. There was a series called Orson Welles' Great Mysteries. And I had a very nice part in one of those episodes.
So he had a...
That's about the only thing, because I was so embarrassed.
Well, it's obviously he had a good sense of humour about the whole situation. So, because he always comes across very nice in interviews, if you from old shows and everything. So he didn't disappoint from what it's from.
No, absolutely not. And you can see there's, the gold glints in his eyes. He knew that I wasn't. I mean, he'd got my name down in front of him. but
just along with it. And so he directed you, did he, in that episode that you were in?
No, he didn't actually. No, he just sort of, I don't know, oversaw the whole thing. But it was a strange series, Orson Welles' Great Mysteries.
Yeah.
But good. I mean, really nice actors to work with, and good directors. And we rehearsed at the army barracks in Chelsea. So we were taken to very good lunches when we had a break for lunch. These things are important,
Well, yeah. If the morale isn't good on set, then of course it starts with the army marches on its stomach, doesn't it? So if you get that wrong, then very easily it's the small things, isn't it? I think that makes something good or bad.
I've enjoyed it. I've been scared. I've been embarrassed. But mostly I've had fun and I've learnt a lot.
Well, thank you very much for sharing such lovely stories with me this evening. It sounds like a great career, and particularly, I think the Orson Welles story in particular is a nice one to leave us on. It's that's really, really lovely.
Well, as my brother says, my face is perfect for radio now, so I'm happily doing my radio. I did a couple of stage plays just before excuse me, just before COVID.
Mm.
So, you know, I'm still there to be challenged.
Yeah. So you never wanted to just retire. You quite like challenges and
Oh,
still
no, I've got to keep my brain going.
keep going. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I'm a member of Rotary and things like that. I've got to be, yes, I've got to be busy. And I've got 4 grandchildren, so they keep me quite busy too.
Yes, yeah.
Because I'm very much with them and like to be involved.
Yeah.
I do have to sit down a lot more often than I used to, but
so you wouldn't like to go back to film because, of course, it takes you away from family, and it's very, so it's not very good for family balance, is it? Really, filmmaking.
Well, it depends. I mean, for the plays, yes, I went away for a couple of months, but little people still love you. With the modern science, you've got telephones that, like we are now, we can talk to each other on a telephone. Yeah. Who knew that that would happen? I mean, there is no way that you could be lost anymore to your family if you don't want to be. And I don't want to be.
Yeah, it really has opened it up. I wish I'd bought shares of Zoom back when the pandemic, when COVID hit, because of course they made a huge amount of money. But what would we do without this sort of technology, really? But,
yeah, now it's here. We can't do without it.
No, definitely not. But that's like, thanks, Jenny. That's really, really great.
Thank you for making it an enjoyable evening. And I'm sorry that I coughed my way through.
Oh no, not at all. You did very well, I thought. Yeah.
Bless you, and thank you to your lady wife too.
I'll pass it on. Yeah.
Bless you.
Okay, well, have a lovely evening. Enjoy your week, and I'll see you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Take
Bye.
care.